Welcome back to another episode of Bulletproof Mindset. In today's episode, we have a very special guest. I had the pleasure of interviewing Andy Scott, who has just recently won his IFBB Pro card in the open bodybuilding category. What makes this even more special is that this has been Andy's dream for almost 12 years of his life working towards this goal. And it was an honour to go into his story today, diving into what it takes to become a competitive bodybuilder. Now we get to hear his story on how he got into lifting and his journey through bodybuilding so far, and the commitment and dedication that he has towards some big dream goals of reaching the Olympia stage. It's honestly so inspirational, and I know you're really going to enjoy today's episode. Now before we do get into the episode, if you're looking to follow Andy on any social media platform at all, he's got his own podcast, he's got a YouTube channel, but you can mostly find him on Instagram. All of that information is going to be in the show notes below this video, wherever you're watching or listening. And not only is Andy a fantastic bodybuilder, but he is also a fantastic coach. If after today's conversation you're maybe interested in working with Andy, check out the show notes as well, where you can apply to potentially work with him. And I probably should preface by saying that it's not just bodybuilders that he trains everyday people as well. Lastly, before we get into the podcast, I just want to say, if you're new around here, first of all, thank you for checking out today's episode. I hope you enjoy it. And if you do enjoy it, one of the best ways you can do to support me and this little podcast that I've got is by leaving a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or subscribing on YouTube. Don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know how you thought today's episode was going. And with that being said, I hope you enjoy today's conversation. Congratulations is in order, first of all. How does it feel? It must feel quite, is it like sunk in?
It has now.
Yeah.
At the time it didn't. It took about 2 weeks for it to sink in. Yeah, it was one of those ones where you've worked 12 years, literally 12 years, almost to the day, to try and get there.
Yeah. And
then when it happens, it's kind of like, is that real? You know what I mean? So there was another part of it as well where because I knew it was eventually going to happen someday for me, there was a part that was a little bit, I don't want to say anticlimax, that's not the right term, but it was just so much mixed emotion. I didn't really know how to process it. You can see me on stage, I'm celebrating, but I'm not celebrating as much as I have in the past.
You're like zoned out, like,
I was kind of
is this real?
Exactly. So it was very, very surreal. So, but no, it's definitely kicked in now. And I think the realization of where I am now, I think it's kind of kicking in. So, right back to the bottom again. Guys my height, so I'm 5'11", so guys my height at like Olympia standard are competing like 270 shredded on stage. So that's what, 128 kilo or something. So
and where do you sit just now?
I was 255 in Spain,
right,
when I won my pro card. So a stone off where I think I need to be.
Yeah.
But I'm in no rush. I think a lot of guys, when they go up to the pro league, they tend to rush it. They tend to get too big too quickly, kind of spoil their physique, maybe impact their health a wee bit as well.
Yeah.
So I'm in no rush to push up to that.
Yeah.
If I could gain maybe like £3 a year, I think that would keep me in the game for a long time, because I want to be in this for as long as I possibly can. So.
Oh, absolutely. But I think I seen it pop up on my feed, and seen a few people that we know in common like share it and stuff like that. And I was like, there's that guy. So we obviously, this is the first time we've met and that sort of stuff. But I remember back in Pure Gym days, I never worked out in Pure Gym, but sometimes if I had a job in town, I'd go up to Pure Gym, and I remember seeing you train, and you were like one of the biggest guys I've ever seen in person. Like we are literally talking 10 years ago.
Yeah,
I remember seeing you doing pull-ups, and I was like, man, I didn't think big guys done functional movement. I thought it was just like the pressing and all that, but you were someone that was always very big on compound lifts. So I think it's fantastic to see that you've like fulfilled that and seen that through.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something there about you knew it was going to happen eventually, which I think is the disciplined mindset, isn't it? And that sort of thing. Have you ever been kind of thrown off through any of your prep at all over the years where you're like, is this really worth it?
Yeah. So I've told this story before on my podcast and social media before, but 2014, I was invited to do the Arnold Classic Europe.
Yeah. So this is the biggest. Yeah.
So
I know this is the sore one for you.
So I was looking at the lineup. In hindsight, I could have, if I did come in 100%, I could have potentially won. I think anyway. But I ended up getting to like a binge cycle, just couldn't get out of it, and it just ended up just looking terrible. So went all the way to Madrid, obviously spent a fortune. I was a student at the time, I had no money, so Went all the way over there, and then I didn't even hit one pose, and I got told to leave the stage.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I remember listening to your podcast about this, and was it your coach at the time or someone you knew just said before stepping on stage, "What the fuck have you done?"
No, it was a photographer.
Oh, was it? Oh,
yeah,
man.
so I booked a photo shoot for after the show, but he was the official photographer for the show.
Right.
And he just looked at me. He was German, so like he just didn't care.
You know what I mean? Just so blunt.
He's like, "What have you done?" I'm like, "That's not what I wanted to hear, mate. Thanks for that."
Aye.
And I just
thrown off massively.
Thrown off massively. And
Jeez.
there is probably a photo going around on the internet somewhere of the only shot I hit, which is just like a front relaxed. And I remember a few people from the gym. I was training at Extreme in Brigden at the time. They sent me that photo and they're like, "Is that you?" Because I was so unrecognisable because I just absolutely ruined my prep for over the course of about 4 weeks. So,
what age are you at this point?
I was 22.
Right, so pretty really early on in your career, but you've been competing since
I was 19.
19, yeah. So in a good run at it from the pictures that I've seen early days. So you've always been pretty good on your conditioning part. What changed this part? Was it just the pressure, the nerves, or
no? I had no coach. I tried to do everything myself that prep, just looking at myself, and I just kind of got into my head a wee bit. Didn't know how to handle food emotions. I think nowadays in modern competing, there's a lot to do with the psychology behind bodybuilding. A lot of coaches have a good insight into mindset and how to avoid similar situations. But back then, that was only 2014. Even then, the information was pretty sparse.
Social media, like it had to be a long-form YouTube video or muscle magazines. That's literally where you're getting your information from, which is nuts.
I felt very alone at that point because I was like, am I the only guy who can't hack a bodybuilding diet? And, years gone by, you realise that's not true at all. But at the time, that's how it felt. And it was a massive, massive wasted opportunity. And when I got off stage, I remember phoning my training partner at the time, Sean, and I was like, I'm never stepping foot in a gym.
I was going to say, I remember hearing that in the podcast, which is crazy. Imagine you gave up at that point.
I know. And obviously the dust settled. I felt our love of training. I still trained, but I was just going to the gym, just doing whatever. And then eventually I found the fire again, and that was early 2015.
Yeah.
Wanted to get back to it, and then since then it's been
snowballed for there.
I've not cheated on my diet since, and obviously I know how to handle food focus and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
so there's tons I want to get into with you, but I want to take it way back because you started lifting weights to get bigger, to be stronger in rugby. Am I right in saying?
Yeah.
Was that the first time you fell in love with it, or was it always been an appeal for bodybuilding?
I always tell a story about my dad. So I'm originally from Aberdeen. My dad used to be a lecturer at the Aberdeen College in town. Right around the corner from there was a powerhouse, the supplement shop.
Right.
But before they rebranded years ago, they used to have just all these bodybuilders on the door. Right. And I remember when I used to go see my dad with my mum, I'd just stare at them like, what is that?
Cartoons, isn't it? But real life.
But then my mum was always like, that is absolutely disgusting. You do not want to look like that. I was like,
fully.
So I'd always have this,
the writing was on the wall.
I've always had this obsession with just bigger guys. And obviously a rugby background my whole life as well. Like I was never the biggest. So I was always looking up to these. Some of the guys I played with were 6'7" when they were 12 years old. It's ridiculous. So I always had that kind of, I was all been around that kind of alpha male type environment. And I kind of had a wee bit of experience with rugby because an SRU development officer would come to the club and teach you how to lift weights. So just deadlift, squat and bench. And I was like, this is pretty cool. I enjoy this. And then my 16th birthday, I got my gym membership, and then ever since then, it's just been absolute passion for it.
Fall in love with it.
Yeah.
Who was the early inspiration for you back in the day?
Physique-wise? Just
in training-wise, physique-wise, what was it you were drawn to?
I don't know. I changed very quickly. I had no idea what I was doing. I was still eating like a 16-year-old. So, but I saw changes in myself. I bought like new shoes, new shorts, new everything for the gym, and I grew out of them very, very quickly. I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. And obviously, there's a bit of vanity to it as well because a lot of people start noticing. You're like, oh, cool. Like if they're noticing, then
something must be happening.
And then I kind of realised that rugby was never going to go anywhere where I wanted it to go. And I was like, well, if I'm putting all this effort into the gym, I need some sort of goal. And I'd watched all these YouTube videos, primarily the Muscle Tech ones, the 60-second ones. Yep. And it was like Johnny Jackson, Branch Warren, all teaching you how to deadlift and stuff like that. And I just watched them, and so I looked into that and I was like, what is it they do?
It's like hardcore stuff, isn't it?
I was like, Jesus Christ. And then started watching the shows, went to my first show when I was 16 down in Nottingham. Saw Lewis Breed win the category I eventually went and won. And it's quite cool because Loose Breed's a pro now, and he's done really well in America and that. And I'm like, I know him personally now, so it's all like come full circle, which is pretty cool. And yeah, ever since then, it's just
been snowballed there.
Aye.
Did you stick high school out all the way to then go to university and stuff? Like, what was your academic?
I went all the way through to 6th year, and then I'd done a degree in mechanical engineering at Aberdeen. So I'd done my bachelor's in Aberdeen, and the reason I live in Glasgow now is because I came down to do my master's at Strathy in subsea engineering, and just never went back.
Interesting. So the mechanic was on the cards then? Was that just something you thought you wanted to do? Or?
No, I never wanted to do that. No,
just money, or like what's a paid job?
See if you're from Aberdeen, I'm sure if anyone's from Aberdeen, they'll testify to this. See if you go to school in Aberdeen, they just push you towards the oil industry. Like at the time, that was going on like 15 years ago. It was like, you have to get into oil. You have to. That's where all the big money is. Blah blah blah.
It's weird how that happens because it always comes to insecurity of those people that then push it down to the kids and they're like, no, we'll do what we want.
I do what I want, yeah. Because like, I wish that we had obviously a careers advisor. I don't know if you had one as well. And I wish you just asked, like, what is your interest? I'm like, I like rugby and lifting weights. She's like, okay, cool, be a PT then. Don't go work on an oil rig. You know what I mean?
So I wanted to be, I actually did want to be a PT in high school, but so I enjoyed lifting weights. But when I looked around, never seen anyone older being a PT, and I was like, oh, that's not a career. So I actually went into the telecoms business for what, 5, 6, 7 years or something like that. And then I made the jump at the age of 27 just 3 years ago, and I was like, no, fuck it, I can do what I want. So I was just playing into that whole like this is what you have to do type of thing.
Because I remember after the first semester in first year, we'd done our exams, and then we went back for the second semester. I remember turning to my best mate and I was just like, I don't want to be here. And he's like, what do you want to do instead then? I was like, I don't know, PT. I should have just done it. But I went home, came back the next day, I was like, I'll stick it out. 4.5 years later, I'm still doing this engineering degree. I did have a graduate job lined up. So I'd done an internship in 2014, actually during that prep that went to hell. And unfortunately, the oil industry collapsed in 2015. And then I got told that job was gone. So, and then after that, I had about 3 interviews in the space of 6 months. It was awful. I went to an interview in London, and I knew I'd messed up that interview big time.
Really?
Like, whatever. So I remember being it was at Gatwick or something. I booked my PT course on my phone.
Oh, did you? You're like, that was the last straw.
That's the last straw. And ever since then, it's just...
What stopped you kind of pursuing it? Like, is there a lot of pressure from family? Is there a lot of pressure from peers? Like, what's going on?
No, I generally think it was just indoctrined, if that's maybe too strong a word. But I generally thought you had to go to get a degree, you had to go into the oil industry, and that's your life. Because all my mates from Aberdeen, all my schoolmates, they're involved in engineering in some way.
So they've all, you're seeing them getting their jobs or going through it, and you're like, so, fucking falling behind.
And but it kind of taught me that, you know, to kind of follow your gut. My gut told me the whole time that you don't like this. You don't enjoy being at uni. I didn't like the lifestyle. I didn't go to freshers and do nothing. I just wanted to lift weights. And I was kind of, you know, I was like that close to actually packing it in, but it never happened. But it all happens for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
The reason I'm down in Glasgow, and you know, I've met everyone that I know, and obviously like all my mates and stuff like that. I would never have met them if I hadn't moved to Glasgow. So it does all work out for.
Oh yeah, for sure. Right. So what's your physique aspirations? Like your training up till. So what age are you when you kind of go full in on the PT side of things?
PT started April 2016, so that would have been, how old was I then? 20, just before I turned 24.
Okay, right. So you'd done a few preps then?
Yeah,
and that's kind of building momentum.
I've done 4 years in the juniors with the UKBFF.
So I'd imagine like the thing that encourages you is people reaching out. It's like, man, you look awesome. Like, what tips have you got? And then you find yourself start sharing your journey, and it just becomes a natural progression then.
Even at 23, 24, whatever I was still like quite big, and I started in Bath Street Pure Gym, and I think I expected to just walk in and be on 30 hours by the second week.
Yeah,
that wasn't the case. I think even still now, even with social media, I think my kind of physique is still a little bit intimidating, a little bit off-putting. So it took me a while to find my feet. There was like during the time of trying to find my feet as a PT, just because the business wasn't coming through, and I was getting really frustrated with it as well. So I've all this knowledge. I'm only 24, but I've been in the game since I was 16. And so I was getting quite frustrated. I applied for the police, the fire service, everything, because I was like, this isn't for me. But I stuck it out, and then I got my first PT client. People saw me PTing her in the gym, and then it just snowballed from there. And eventually the online kicked off. A few guys that I trained with or trained around, they asked me to prep them. Done quite well with coaching on a competitive stage, and then it kind of snowballed from there. And I'm glad I stuck it out though. I'm really glad I stuck it out. So
what do you think was holding you back? Because you're like, I've got all this now, and it's probably a common thing from PTs. It's like they have the experience to train, but then it's like there's another barrier. It's like, why can't people come to me?
I think my physique, number one. I think that's like at the time. I think in a gym like Pure Gym, people are put off by it rather than motivated by it.
People like your mum going, do I look like that?
God, what muscles I do. So I think that's an aspect of that. Also, I started my first gym that I got a membership when I was 16. That was a JJB, which is now a DW.
Right.
But I also went to another gym called Results Gym in Aberdeen. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's
Results Gym.
It's now a powerlifting gym, but it used to be a bodybuilding gym as well. And so I started in a hardcore bodybuilding background, so I didn't know how to talk to
average Joe Joe,
normal person, you know what I mean? But like Gen Pop, I didn't know how to talk to them. Still to this day, I'm awful at sales. I'm not a good salesman at all. I just kind of let my Instagram and my social media kind of do the talking for me. But
what about like social skills and that sort of stuff? Was that tough at the start, or did you find you were quite?
See, I'm not an introvert, but I'm not an extrovert either. I'm kind of in between, and I can read people quite well, and I can kind of tell. See if someone doesn't immediately give me like a warm reception, I'm like, nah.
It's like that. So it's going to be a grind.
Pretty much
I would imagine if you're taking clients on that you're like, we need to cut this relationship pretty quickly.
So it was one of those ones where I wasn't quite out of my shell yet, but now I feel I am. Like, I don't have a problem kind of speaking to people now, and I definitely, having worked with such a broad range of people, from people who've never been in a gym to I've got professional clients now as well. Having that broad range allows me to kind of know how to talk to, the Gen Pop, the competitor, and all of in between as well. So, did
you ever get any support from anyone from a business perspective? Because I think you just think like you become a PT, everybody's interested in fitness or wants to be fitter. It should be that simple, but there's a lot more craft that can go into it.
Even in 2016, the business like mentoring didn't really exist, or that I know of anyway. Social media still wasn't really the powerhouse it is now either. So, guys still posted their workouts and all that sort of stuff, and had done stuff on YouTube, but I never had any kind of business experience or knowledge of how to market myself at all. It's just been trial and error since then. I'm lucky because we look at the industry now and we think it's all social media marketing, but the word of mouth is still
it's so powerful as
well.
So powerful.
People forget that.
Yeah,
I think a lot of new PTs come into the industry just like they're content creators rather than
can I be viral before I can?
Yeah, exactly. Rather than actually master their craft. So I tried to master my craft with the people that did come to me. Allowed it to kind of snowball from there by word of mouth, and then just kept competing. And the competitive side of things really kind of drove business and kind of got eyes out and stuff. And it's been trial and error. There's been no actual proper strategy.
Yeah, no, but I love that. I love that outlook. Is I had a similar strategy. I was like, right, let me get known as the personal trainer that's good at his job. I was like, social media is a part of it, but it's like, if I can be known as that, if I can be, that guy's always in the gym, he's always training people, then surely like someone's going to go, hey, look, I'm interested in working with you. And like you said, I think people jump those steps way too quickly. So it's quite cool to see.
Yeah.
How do you feel with the evolution of fitness and where it's at now with the combination of social media? Do you think it's harder on this day?
Yeah, I would hate to start now.
Yeah.
Hopefully, no one is watching that. But I don't. I think I'd have struggled more starting now because it is a minefield now. There's so many people that do it. You've got access to people all over the world. If you've got a coach from Australia, you can go get a coach from Australia. So there is far more competition now. So I'm glad I started when I started. But I think
pigeonhole you, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think now though is there's far more eyes on the fitness industry. In the UK and Scotland, it's definitely booming. I think it's going to be a massive industry in the next 5 to 10 years.
And it's still fairly new. I think don't think it existed like just shy of 30, 40 years ago. Like when from a personal training standpoint.
Yeah.
What was? Did you ever have any like dreams or aspirations like before you started training? Like what was some of the things that you had when you were younger? You looked up
going back to like school days, I wanted to be a Royal Marine, an officer in the Royal Marines. So I actually done my selection in the start of 2010 when I was 17. So I done my officer selection, then my POC, and past that, and then I got offered a place in the September start because the officer course runs September to September, and I got offered a place in that, and about a month before I had all the offers from uni coming through as well, and I was like, nah, I'll go to uni first just in case Marines don't work out. While I was at uni, I started competing and realised that bodybuilding was more for me, and then obviously I didn't want to do engineering, but I thought if I am going to go to uni, I'll just do engineering because I kind of like physics and I kind of like maths, so I thought I'd go and do that. But yeah, I want to be a Royal Marine, and I've got friends who are Royal Marines. I've got one of my closest friends in the army, and I'm very, very jealous of them.
Really?
Yeah, I still am. I'd still love to do it. But
you do have this kind of militant approach about it, I must admit, just not from an intimidating factor, but more from like a discipline factor. So, but it would make complete sense of why bodybuilding and the sport that it is, of the time that it takes to put into it, like why you're drawn to that as well. So, do you think it was the discipline part that you're drawn to? Yeah,
just being regimented and just kind of devoted to the one thing and stuff. So that really appealed to me. Even as I remember, there was actually Royal Marine books in my primary school in the library. I don't know why they were there, but I obviously tried to get it ropey in young. I remember I must have been like 8 or 9, and then I grew up with war movies my dad watched and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, that looks pretty cool. And the first opportunity I had, I went and done my selection. So that's the closest I got to going down that path. I'd love to know what my life, how it would pan out
if that's where you went.
Yeah, if that was the case. But, I'm very content with my life. But when I see like Royal Marine adverts on like YouTube and stuff,
you get fired up.
I follow their Instagram and everything. I watch that, I go, oh, that looks fun.
There's definitely like an alphaness or like this kind of
exciting
nature within us for that.
So I have massive admiration for all the guys.
Yeah, it's insane. It's insane. What's how close are you with your mum and dad? Are you the only?
No, I've got a younger brother.
Right, okay.
Younger brother's 3 years younger than me.
Is he in any sort of fitness to that?
He plays rugby. He actually manages. There's in Glasgow. What's the Glasgow Life?
Right.
In Aberdeen, the equivalent's Sport Aberdeen. So he runs a few gyms for them.
Awesome.
So he's wanting to become a PE teacher, but he's a big rugby man. So he's still heavily involved in rugby. So he trains primarily for that. He's never told me, but I don't think he's got a kind of like aesthetic goal behind his training.
It's performance based.
Yeah, it's very performance based. Yeah.
So is your mum and dad fitness based at all? Is it they got anything?
I wouldn't say fitness based. My mum tries to stay active, like she swims and stuff like that. But I've always been around sport. I think that's what it is. Like my dad's a massive football fan, rugby fan. So I grew up around those two sports. I don't like football, but but I watched a lot of it when I was young on the TV, like just out the side of my eye. Mum loved tennis, gymnastics, all like just sport was on all the time in my house. So I kind of grew up in that environment. Mum, they weren't like, you have to do this, you have to do that, but it's like, you have to do something though. So I was put into Taekwondo when I was like 6 years old. Really enjoyed that. And then when I was 13, I was doing rugby at the same time. I was like, I kind of want to put more energy into my rugby. So that was how I started in sport was Taekwondo. And the instructor that I had back then was like an 8th Dan black belt from America. So I think he was probably, in this day and age, he probably couldn't get away with some of the stuff he'd done to 6-year-olds. I know that sounds a bit weird, but you know what I mean? He's very, like, I think he instilled that kind of discipline at a very young age. And
like when you get hit and all that for like doing something wrong.
So like at the time, I hated it. So my mum was like, right, we've got to go to Taekwondo on a Friday night. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to go to Taekwondo. But looking back, I'm so glad they sent me to that.
So it's like these little adverse situations, these like wee discipline wins that you end up getting in.
Exactly. So, but yeah, they were heavily involved in sport. They don't quite understand bodybuilding. So
that was going to be my next question. So like, how's that dynamic when you're doing what you do? Because I've only done one show. Mine was a physique show, but that's as far as I kind of took it. But my parents never even came to that. They just never understood it.
Yeah.
And I get why, because them growing up, they're like, oh, that's gay. Like, what are you doing that sort of stuff for? But it's like, there's a different part to this, the whole training and mindset and that. So what's that like with your parents and family?
My mum openly admits she has no idea what she's looking at. When they're on stage, they all look great. I was like, they don't, trust me. But,
his pecs are off, like, they're disordered.
But they're both very supportive. My dad definitely wishes I still played rugby, like my brother. I can tell. He's just like, just imagine the damage you do at your size. I was like, Dad, I can't run.
Aye.
So I don't think I'll be doing much. But no, they are very, very supportive. And they were both there when I won my pro card. So that must have been
pretty cool. Yeah.
Aye. So, but yeah, they don't really understand it. But they see the discipline and the career built off the back of it as well. So
yeah. So let's talk about this then for a sec. So you're falling in love with bodybuilding and you're looking at it like, I want to make this a career of sort. Is it a game plan, or is it I'm just going to go and try and win a show, try and place in a show, work up to pro card then? Is that as simple as what the mindset is, or is it a wee bit more in depth?
Kind of. I remember when I done my first season in 2012, my coach at the time, Graham Park, who was a Mr. Universe, he told one of the other members of the gym, he said, he'll be a pro one day. And I remember she told me that, and I was like, whoa, right, okay, so this guy who's been in the game for 20 years is saying, I think it's more than that, 30 years, is saying that, then there must be something to it. And I kind of looked up to the guys who were turning pro at the time. So Anth Bales, who I've trained with before, who else? Nathan Deasha was turning pro around that time. So as I was coming up through the junior ranks, I was just watching all these physiques and kind of comparing myself, being like, right, he's X weight at X height at X age. So I kind of need to be there by that point.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I've just kind of followed their kind of templates. And I've always known in myself what I've needed to improve when I've done a show. Like I need to be sharper, I need to be bigger, and things like that. So I have compared myself quite heavily to other people, which I kind of tell clients not to, because, you know, they can get into that negative mindset sometimes. But I had the blueprint there from guys who are now, some of them are friends of mine now, which is pretty cool. So is
that like a weird pinch me moment type of thing? Is it?
Weird. Yeah, it's still strange. So like I'll go down to Durham to train with Anth, and like when he's talking to me, I'm just like, this is pretty weird.
Follow everything you did.
Exactly. Yeah, I remember me and my training partner we'd watch Anth train on my mum and dad's computer, and then we go train.
Yeah.
So it's wee things like that's strange. Like I know, Samson Dowda, it's the third one. I know Samson personally, so
that's cool.
That's weird. It's so strange.
And that's the weird thing about social media, because it's like the modern day celebrity in a way. Do you ever feel like, because you built a pretty good reputation up for yourself, do you think it's weird that you're now in that position for others? Like, I see the comments on your YouTube and that sort of stuff, and you're like, man, there's so much inspiration coming off the back of what you're doing. Just like that, it's like generation. It's moving down.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's kind of a bit of a pinch me moment. I'm just a normal guy. You know what I mean, just a normal guy who likes lifting weights. So I try not to like let overwhelm me and stuff like that. But you know, if I can try and show younger guys, like be the template that, you know, like James Hollinshead was, and Nathan Deasha, Flex Lewis all were for me, if I can kind of be a template for them as well. And I don't know if we're going to kind of touch on it, but that's why I kind of see like too many young guys between the ages of 16 and just say 25 just kind of getting roped into the wrong kind of, in my opinion, training and stuff like that. And
so that's what I want to dive into next. So you find the love for this sport, and you're introduced to compound lifts, which I think is very interesting, because I see from working in gyms, the young guys, they're watching the likes of CBum and whatever bodybuilder it is that are following, or these influencers, and it's like tons of work done on the cables and not really much emphasis put on compounds. Are you a big believer in heavy compounds?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. 100%.
I love that because we were always getting a debate, okay, is it the most optimal, all that sort of stuff. So maybe touch on that from a point of what you've experienced with yourself and the hundreds of people that you've worked with.
Yeah, so in terms of the foundations are the compound lifts. So, you know, your bench presses, your squats, your deadlifts, which I incorporate all of them or a variation of them. Machines and cables have their place, but you know, the bread and butter is heavy compounds to failure. And I think that step is almost being, you know, skipped by younger guys. I mean, let's face it, training with cables is easier. Training machines is easier. And the proof is in the pudding. Like there's physiques there that have got massive gaps in them. You don't have like dense muscle tissue, and that's primarily down because you haven't done the 10 years of compound lifts. I mean, like proof is in the pudding. Look at all the top guys, the top of the IFBB Pro League, and look at some of the best amateurs in the UK and the world. They all train the same way, and that's heavy to failure with free weight movements. Yes, they use machines, but they don't prioritize their training around that. And that kind of always kind of baffles me, because me and my training partner talk about it all the time. Like, you know, I try not to use myself as an example, but I'm an IFBB pro and I'm in Future Fitness and Shawlands, like, copy me. Like, just copy me. Just copy what I do. But a lot of people don't. And I don't know if that's because, I've got a psychopath for a training partner who screams and shouts, but it's one of those ones where, like, the template's there. Like, I'm not a genetic freak. I've maybe got more discipline than the average guy, but, I'm not a genetic freak, and just copy me and trust me, your physique will improve. And, when I always kind of say to online clients, like come in and train with me just for a session, and I'll show you the intensity I want you to train at, and then you'll take that away and go with that. So,
what would you say is the most important part, like when starting out? Would you say it's intensity, or would you say there's obviously it would be a mix between intensity, technique, lifts and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, it's an amalgam of all of them. But the thing that's missing most, regardless if you're using machines or free weights, is intensity. Like, the human body can put up with a lot. Like, I know it's a very, very extreme example, but like, you see the bodies that survived the Holocaust. Trust me, your body can handle a lot.
An extra couple of reps of
exactly. So your chest, your quads, not going to fall off. It's not going to snap off the bone by taking a hack squat to failure. But the thing is, a lot of people need to be shown that. You can watch it on YouTube, but you're not there. You're not there in that set, knowing how that feels. So I kind of feel I've met the right people at the right time. So I remember Graham Park took me in for a chest session when I was 18, and the first exercise, he ruined me. That was the most ruined.
What was it?
It was a machine.
Was it?
Funny enough.
We're warming up, by the way.
But no, it was a plate loaded chest press, and I was just like, what the fuck has just happened?
Is this your first time kind of really experiencing hypertrophy at a failure rate?
Yeah, that kind of, all out failure, pushing past what you think your chest and your body can do. And I remember phoning my mate at the time who I trained with, and I was like, we're training all wrong. Because we were doing like 4 or 5 sets of each exercise, being in the gym for 3 hours, and I was like, we need to try this.
What was your splits like early in the days? Because that's when we've got more energy, we've got more we can spend hours in the gym. I honestly wish I could go back to those days. Something like that. I'm 2 lifts in, man. I'm good. This is a pure mental battle.
Of lifting, I'm tired. I trained every day.
Yeah,
I trained every day.
Was it every day?
18, yeah, and then
was it your typical like body part splits? Full like or just what you felt
like? The first kind of 6 months, I was just going in and doing whatever, doing seated row, thinking my arms would grow, stuff like that. And then I kind of refined it, and then at the time, this is only going back, what was it, 18, 15 years ago, is that like push-pull legs, upper lower splits didn't exist. It was always body part splits.
It was chest straight.
Yeah.
Right, I'm trying to think. Even like flex lows. How old are you just now?
32.
32, right. So I've just turned 30, 31 this year. And again, the people who's sort of looking up to it was body part splits. Yeah. And I remember working in gyms like push pull legs. I was like, man, this is a fairly new thing. Like, what is going on?
It's fairly new, yeah. But I still to this day think body part splits and like refining your training to the holes in your physique,
right,
is still the way to go. Not that push pull legs doesn't work; it absolutely works.
So, what would that look like for someone that is it over the course of a phase of training that more emphasis is put on a certain muscle group or a certain body part? Yeah.
So, for instance, if you're doing, just say push pull legs, just take the pull session for example. Well, not take the push session for example. You have to. There's a bit of give and take there as to how much chest you can devote, how much shoulder you can devote, how much tricep you can devote. And if you do that for long enough, just say a year, 2 years, you will start to notice, right, my triceps are lacking compared to my shoulder, or vice versa, or my chest is pretty narrow, or the upper portion of my chest. So that's when the body part split would come in then. And you're like, right, I'll emphasize X movement, I'll take the shoulder stuff out, I'll do maybe just more isolation for shoulders. And that's how you kind of tweak everything and kind of find your formula. So like my formula just now is, I do heavy compound stuff for chest, 3 exercises, and then I'll do like a light isolation for shoulders. And then right now it's only 1 bicep exercise. So on paper, it's nothing at all, but it's the level of intensity that you're applying and that takes a long time to develop. So
it's like the stronger connection you're getting to the muscle group. Like with it, you probably remember the first time was like you can't really feel your back the first time you're training. Like kind of then there's a session where it hits.
It's like,
you're like, fuck, is that it?
It's like kicking a ball with your left foot. Like just one time it actually connects. You're like, oh right,
that felt good.
That's how it is. So, but yeah, I still do a body part split. I've tried push pull legs. It's not my cup of tea. I've never tried an upper lower, but it's just not precise enough.
Yeah. Well, the level that you're at and what you're looking to achieve, it would make sense that you'd be very meticulous about what areas you're trying to bring up. So going through your first couple of shows, would you say that you had genetics in your favour, or you adapted well to training, or would you say it was just kind of average?
I think considering my diet when I was 16 was pretty shocking, and I still managed to grow.
What
I just go like pie and chips for lunch, and just fry-ups for breakfast and all that. So
was your mates around you going like, man, you're massive, what is going on?
People like, well, when I started, the rest of the boys in my year started training as well.
Right.
They kind of saw that, but considering that my diet was pretty poor, I thought I'd put on a good bit of size and a good bit of strength relatively easily. Like I said before, I'm not a genetic freak, but that's probably compared to the Olympia guys. They're just from another planet. But yeah, I probably do build muscle a little bit easier than the average guy. But I've still had to graft my arse off to get where I need to be.
And I think that's a misconception. It's like, he's got really good genetics. Like, but he still has to put in a shift. You don't just wake up and have. There's a bodybuilder just now, like his calves and his neck so thick. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Rubio.
So he's just such a dense, thick character. And it's like that's like the extreme part of genetics. But he doesn't just wake up and have chest and shoulders and cap shoulders and 20-inch arms or whatever. Like it's mental.
Exactly. If you're watching the Olympics just now, like, do you think these guys?
It's a good example.
Bread? You know what I mean, so bed.
Does that frustrate you when you hear that? Have you ever had that thrown at you a bit?
Yeah, I have.
What is it they've said that you've got good genetics on, just in general?
It's not even passive aggressive. It's just like, oh well, if you had genetics like yours, and I was like, yeah,
come on, mate. Like,
devoting my whole adult life to this. It's a little bit more to it than that. But I understand what they're saying. I do get that. For instance, like, I bet you Cristiano Ronaldo's got one of the best hand-eye coordinations or hand-foot coordinations ever. So that is genetic. But I bet you he works his arse off. Like, I'm watching what's the Chicago Bulls documentary again on Netflix?
The one with Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
I literally just put it on the other day and watched the first episode.
It.
I can't remember.
So
I know, people know what we're talking about.
So I mean, look at Michael Jordan. Like, he's what is he, 6'6" or something like that? He's built for basketball, but he still grafts 24 hours a day towards basketball at the time. So it's genetics play a part, but the work ethic and that you can't.
You need to earn that.
You're given that. You have to earn that. So
So see, going through work ethic and try to develop that, going through your teens into your 20s and that sort of stuff, what was some of the things that helped you with that? Because I imagine that's extremely challenging. You're at uni, you're doing something you hate, then you're counter with something you love. But bodybuilding, which we'll get into a wee bit more of, it's not just the gym session. There's another 23, 22 hours, depending on how long you're training, out with that from your sleep supplements and then everything else.
Yeah.
What was that like for you from a work ethic bit? So your diet was pretty poor in your teens.
Yeah.
You get to your first show at 19. Did that improve the course, or did you get a coach or anything like that?
I didn't get a coach per se, because even in 2011, 2012, coaching didn't really exist. It did it like the higher level. They had coaches and nutritionists, but I just sought out.
You kind of looking at Pure Gym, like, I don't think these guys are going to train me for this.
So basically what I done was, the good, again, I met the right people at the right time. So I used to play rugby with two guys, Alex and Lewis, and they went and done weightlifting at Results Gym.
Right.
And I remember Lewis telling me about a guy called Graham Park who owned the gym, and he was a Mr. Universe. So I just typed in Aberdonian Mr. Universe, and Graham came up in Google. And I was like, right, okay, so that's the guy I need to go speak to. And that kind of goes back to my previous point. Like, if you put Glasgow bodybuilder IFBB pro into Google, like, I'm pretty sure I'm the only one that comes up. There's only 2 IFBB pros in Scotland anyway. And
who's the other one?
Max Johnson, male IFBB pros.
Right.
Yeah.
Aye.
And if I was a young guy, I'd be like, it's not a sales pitch either. But if I was a young guy, I'd be like, right, I'll go to him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he's there. So that's what I did. That was my mentality.
Someone who's been through it in the trenches and that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So met him, and he kind of. He guided me, didn't necessarily coach me, but I still consider him my coach. A great mentor. And when I turned pro, I messaged him. I was like, look, mate, like, just so you know, because he doesn't have social media, just so you know, I turned pro, and just want to thank you. And that was, last time I saw Graham was about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, so a long time ago.
It's crazy how much someone can play an impact like that, because pushes you onto the next stepping stone, the next journey of your chapter.
Yeah. So he was a great guy to meet. Didn't pull any punches. If you were still fat, he would tell you.
What are you learning then through this from you as a person personally? Like what?
The eye of bodybuilding.
Right.
So kind of mentioned, like, my mum has no idea what she's looking at because she hasn't got an eye for it. She's got no interest in it either. But you learn the eye. So like Graham, like, right, you're still a wee bit soft. You're not hard enough here. And I'm like, what are these terms that he's throwing out, and dry this and all that sort of stuff. So I was learning.
You're looking and you're like, I look pretty good. I'm in pretty good shape.
Exactly. I was like, so it's the first time I see lines in my legs and stuff like that. So, but he gave me obviously all the lingo and all the stuff at the time, and learn how to see bodybuilding, because that's a huge part of it, especially as a coach now as well. Is you have to break someone apart, and that's what the judges are doing when they're looking at you. They're breaking you down. They're kind of seeing what's this, comparing that, and yeah, Graham has a very truthful and harsh eye, and yeah, he's probably one of the best people to have come across that early in the game anyway. So
for sure. What makes you book your first show? Like, was that just always the game plan? I'm going to do a show one day.
Yeah.
So you get it done, and how did you win your first show? Am I right?
I didn't win my first show. I came second.
Second, sorry.
And the guy who beat me at that, I beat him 4 weeks later. So
redemption.
Aye, thankfully. 2010, that was my last year playing rugby, and I knew like Scotland was never going to happen. I wasn't even sniffed at by any kind of pro teams either, so I knew it was going to happen. So I said, right, I'm going to give myself 2 years. I'll do my first show in 2 years' time. So that was 2010. I said I'll do it in 2012. At the time, I still wanted to be an officer in the Royal Marines. So, but when I stood on stage for the first time, it was a NABA Scottish in Glenrothes. And again, I've told this story before, but it's like still to this day, I remember that so clearly. Whereas I've done 26 shows. There's some shows I've done I don't remember a thing from the day, but I remember it so clearly walking up on stage. The audience was only maybe half full. And I remember just thinking, yeah, this is what I want to do.
You get the adrenaline rush.
This is really cool. And even to this day, I love it. I love standing on stage. So it was that kind of moment.
Spark.
That was the spark. Yeah, and ever since then, I've just been obsessed with bodybuilding. I still am, just as passionate, if not more. And obviously now taking up a step up to the pro league now, it's even more of a passion.
It's awesome to see. What's your dream with it? What's like the ideal kind of goal, or what is the defined goal?
To be on the Olympia stage.
Yeah,
definitely. I'm still a realist. I do know my place. I think I can win as a pro. I think I can win some good shows. The Olympia, you've seen some of the people that have won the Olympia. Like it's ridiculous. So I don't think that's in my ballpark. Again, when you're moving up to that level, you have got we can play the genetic card a lot more than you can.
I would say it's getting from 1% to 0.1% is a difference.
Yeah, so I will stand on the Olympia stage. Where I place, I don't know. But looking at the lineups this year, knowing a lot of British guys who have done these shows and known them personally, I kind of feel that I would have done quite well even this year.
Right.
But I think with another stone on my physique, I'll be able to pull more of a punch my first pro shot. I don't expect to win. But I think one day I will, and then I'll be.
Why not compete just now? What's the thought process in that? So I think it's a lot of people will be listening. Like you look like it's the untrained eye, I suppose, as well. Because it's like, look, you look like you can stand toe to toe with some of these guys, but I think a lot of people overlook the prep side of things and the time that can take out of a year's worth of training and an off season, all that sort of stuff. Is that really what it comes down to? Is prolonging that?
Yeah. So basically, I started my prep the 1st of January this year, and then my show was the 2nd of June. So I dieted all that time, and I think I told you before we even walked in, I'm still not quite there mentally to push my physique yet. And that's in an off-season setting, let alone a prep. I think going back into a prep, there's no chance. Mentally, I know I'm not there. And that was a mistake I made in 2014. So I know that not to step foot into a prep unless I feel a certain way.
Right. So that was a question I had. What do you find more challenging from a mindset point of view? Is it the prep or off-season? The off-season part or on the lead up to the show?
Mentally, the comp prep pre-contest is far harder mentally. Right. But physically, the off-season's harder for me. And me and my pal Greg have spoke about this in our podcast, is the amount you have to eat, the size you have to bear to get to where you need to be. It's it's horrible. Like I'd rather starve for days on end than be full for days on end.
People listen to that, like, may even go like,
Yeah.
Eat food, man. It can't be that hard. So talk us through, like, what would like a typical meal setting look like from a calorie wise, carb wise, and then what does that look like in terms of meals for you?
So peak off season, which would have been September last year, I was at 7,000 calories. I was on 2 cheat meals a week as well, so I'm a Wednesday and a Saturday. Protein, I'm not a big protein guy. That's trial and error. So about 300 grams of protein, well over 1,000 grams of carbs, and like 150, 180 fat a day as well. So 6 to 7 whole meals, and then maybe 2 or 3 shakes on top of that as well. So it's constant, absolute constant eating. There's never a time where I'm not eating or drinking something.
Is it every hour, pretty much, or every couple of hours?
Peak, yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's insane. That is absolutely nuts, and I think that becomes that's what really separates from someone showing up one show and then being able to actually better themselves when it comes to the next show.
Yeah, and like you're uncomfortable all the time. You can barely breathe. You're sweating all the time. You can't stay awake. You just feel bogged down all the time. It's not a nice place to be in. Like you said, people think, oh, eating that amount of food, that must be class. It's like, trust me, it's not.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm kind of not in a rush to go back into my off season yet. I'm not on low food. Me and my coach just increased it to 5,100, so it's not low at all. But it's not as high as I know that I need to push in order to
get quite comfortable? Is that where you would sit, like, if you had to kind of...
So I'll be hungry for every meal today, so if you look at it that way.
Which is madness, isn't it? It's the beauty of muscle when it's coming on, it's in the right places.
The metabolism, I built that over 16 years.
Yeah. So there's so many directions you can go with this, but I think one thing that I saw you speak about is your digestion and the importance of having good digestion with that. Obviously, food is very independent to individuals. So you mentioned protein there, then you don't need a high amount of protein to maybe some other people. How did you work that? What's kind of going on there? So
my protein probably sits peak off season around 350. That's from like direct sources, so your whole sources, not taking into account carbs. That's trial and error. So I pushed, I was doing like 300 grams of chicken per meal, and then realised my digestion was awful on that. And so it's just a case of, right, if that's 500, let's pull it back to 450, see how that is. Digestion's still ruined, so I just keep going down and down and down. And then I never saw a difference performance-wise or size-wise between 350 and 500 anyway. If anything, I grew better on 350 because my digestion was better. So you're absorbing things more efficiently. So
and I think that's a really important part, because people think, oh, this is just part and parcel of the grind in the game. When did do you realise that through coaches that you're working with, or was it just over time you just like, oh, I actually feel better?
The digestion side of things. Yeah. That was more my own thing. Obviously I'd done intolerance tests and all that as well. So I had shoulder surgery 2022, and I used the time that I had off from that to kind of figure out my gut, because my gut had been poor for, at that point, about 6-7 years. Not horrific, but not good either.
Is this you just battling through it? Like,
just thinking, oh well, that's the bodybuilding diet.
This is bodybuilding,
and then realised that I can't eat chicken, can't eat oats, can't eat certain vegetables. Pretty sure I'm lactose intolerant. So all these wee things I kind of figured out. And then when it was time to go back to eating correctly, well, I always ate correctly, but push back into a bodybuilding diet, everything started to fire a lot better. I was less inflamed. My physio noticed that. I felt better, slept better, trained better, grew better. So most of 2023 only had one shoulder, like, essentially. And that was one of the best off seasons I've ever had. And I put that primarily down to figuring out my digestion and not eating certain things and not putting stuff that's inflamed. So even on 7,000 calories, I was never bloated. So that's kind of testament to that.
Oh, absolutely. I say this all the time. It's like, just because you've seen something online, it's like, oh yeah, take this shake, take this powder, take whatever it is. The telltale sign, if your gut is not agreeing with it, if you're bloated instantly after that meal, then swap out for something else, because it's not worth it. It's not worth the trade-off. It generally isn't.
It's not. So I have clients, like, he comes up with their intolerance test, like intolerant to rice, and I agree in a moment about this. I was like, doesn't matter, you do something else. Like, I love
plenty
rice.
Other food.
Tough. Do you want a bloated gut for the rest of your life, or what do you want? So, there's plenty of options there to play with.
So you mentioned your injury. What was that like, going through that? That must have been pretty tough from someone who loves working out and is on this path to competing, trying to get his pro card. What's that like? What happened, first of all, actually?
So it was a slap tear in my right shoulder. So the the labrum is a tendon that goes around the ball of your shoulder, and essentially it's split down the middle like a zip. Oh shit, sorry. Like a zip, and I wasn't in pain, but it was really uncomfortable.
Do you feel that instant?
No, I done it over time.
Right.
So I actually
it's just constant.
Yeah, I think I first done it in 2016. So I was doing barbell rows. Woke up the next day, couldn't lift my arm, and I was like, that's really weird. So I couldn't train my upper for about 3 months after that, and then after 3 months, my shoulder started playing ball again. But I think that's when I first like semi tore it, and then I went to my physio maybe 4 or 5 times. He's like, I keep releasing your shoulder, it keeps tightening up. Like, I think you've got a torn slap. And he done a test on it. He's like, that's torn. I was like, so what's the options? He was like, surgery. And I was like, oh, shit, that's the last thing I need. So he's like, do you recommend anyone? So he recommended Professor Mackay at Ross Hall. He's like a world leader in shoulders and knees. And I booked him.
Is that nerve-wracking? Because you're like, it's functional. Like, you can still, like, yeah, okay, you can do these things to adjust and get instant relief maybe, or a little bit more relief. And then you have the potential, because any surgery that you go to, you're signing that thing, hey, look, things can go wrong, but there's a small chance, but it still can happen. Yeah, it was pretty daunting, and I've never had surgery in my life either. So it was one of those ones as well. And so 2 weeks later, I had the operation after that consultation, and it wasn't until September 2023. So that was December 2022. September 2023 was when I felt 100%. So it was a long recovery, very frustrating. And there was times through that where I was like, I wish I never got the surgery now. And yeah, I really, really did doubt whether I was going to be able to come back and turn pro. But you think you'd missed your chance? No, there was always a voice in the back of my head that was like, you've still got it. You've still got it. There's guys that have come back from injuries way worse than a slap tear. You just need to be patient, just keep finding ways. So hired a mobility coach, really invested time into mobility education, flexibility education. And literally, it was like one day, I was just shoulder pressing, I was like, oh, there's no pain. And that was September 2023. So I had a great stint from September until the end of the year, and then went into the prep. In January, I felt fresh. Best I looked at that body weight. So yeah, it all played out well in the end. But yeah, it was very, very frustrating at the time, and it was kind of like why me type moment. Like, why? I was so close, and then that happens. So do you think you had the pro victory before that happened? I think that was probably on the cards a wee bit sooner. Yeah, because I was going to compete in 2023. Oh yeah. Would I've been? I don't know. We'll never. It's one of these. Maybe. We'll never know. Because I definitely lost size through my right side. Yeah, for sure. In the time it took to recover the shoulder. So, would I have been? I don't know. I thought this year was the best I've ever looked on stage in Alicante. I think we really, really nailed it. I was delighted with how I looked there. I don't think I could have done any more, but I probably had to go through the shoulder issues to get there. It's almost like everything all plays its part. Exactly. It's like why moving from Aberdeen, doing something that you don't want to do because it leads you on the path to where you are. So do you remember your weight on your first show, like roughly? I didn't weigh myself at first. No, just go on. No, I didn't start weighing myself until 2018. It must have been so weird to go, you do what? Jump into, oh yeah, I've been jumping on the scales. Just going off the mirror. Yeah. Just going off the mirror and what my trusted eye would say. That's the very old school approach. Obviously, now I weigh myself. So the 2018, I was not, because what happened was I went from the juniors up to the misters or super heavies. So I got as big as I possibly could, and that included getting quite fat as well. And so I started that prep 294, and that was a very sloppy 294. And I came all the way down to 247. I still wasn't shredded though for that prep. How long's the prep usually for you? I started late November 2017. My first show was the start of April. Right. So about 20-ish weeks, I think. Yeah. So did it actually just highlights how much went into gaining that amount of weight for how through that time to be able to just drop where you're at and still go, here, we've still got a long way to go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then I won my first show as a Misters. I won the Saxon overall, PCA Saxon. And then I got beat at the NABA Scottish, came third. That was
crushing. And then I came second at the PCA Scottish that year, and I was happy with what had happened, but
the Scottish or
the Saxon overall.
Right.
But I being beaten on a home stage was quite gutting, to be honest. Yeah, very. But that kind of set me up for 2019, which is still, before I got my pro card this year, was my best year ever. So you learn, and it's people who are getting to compete and they think they're going to be pros in a year. It's like, no, like,
oh man, the naivety when you start working out.
You can do one season. Trust me, you've not even scratched the surface of what you can possibly learn in bodybuilding. That's what fascinates me about it. I could talk about it, I could read about it all day.
I love your approach to the longevity in it, which we'll come on to, because you get your bloods regularly done. You mentioned mobility there, and the reason I was asking your weight difference there, because as you get bigger, like bodybuilding or the open categories, definitely looked at from the average eye of, but they can't really move well and that sort of stuff. Now, you're someone who does move well, like from a mobility perspective. I've seen the videos and that. I remember your one of the videos, I can't remember what show was it, the Tainted Love song, see, the rock song. It has to be one of the, I remember that popping up because I was living in Nottingham at the time.
All right.
What show was that?
Tainted Love, I would have done, that would have been the 2019 British.
Right, okay, so your the effort and graft that you put into the posing elements of that, when does that occur? Is that just part and parcel of the game? Like through every show you just try to get better?
Posing came very, very naturally to me.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain. Like, I don't feel I've ever had to put effort into posing.
Because it looks so like very well polished, like very like meticulous, well in movements and all that sort of stuff. So I was wondering if it was something that's just been hammered into you or just something.
No, I remember the first time. So it's quite a funny story actually. So the first time I met Graham, he took me downstairs into this gym called Bodyworks in Aberdeen, and there was another guy there called Paul Gibson who also competed, and I was 17, 18 at the time, and Graham was like, "Get your kit off then." I was like, "What?"
Is this the first time?
He's like, "What?" I was like, "Come on, you need to show me. You need to stand on stage in your pants, mate, so you can get your boxes in a gym."
I suppose like, growing up with rugby, I guess, is a wee bit.
I was like, used to that. And then I remember Paul saying, "How do you know how to pose like that?" And I was like, "I don't know. I've just been watching folk." He's like, "You're really good at posing." I was like, didn't even
good
know.
Awareness of what your movement's like.
Yeah, so it was one of those ones that just came so naturally to me. So luckily, I've not had to graft like some of my posing clients have. My posing clients really have to work at their presentation. But yeah, that came very naturally. So,
and those that have to work on it, is that because they are tight and they're not as mobile from?
That's one aspect of it.
Being,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
What is it? Is it a coordination element?
Yeah, coordination. So some guys can. It's mad how when you tell someone like turn to the left and put your right foot forward, they're like that. They can't even.
Do you think this is people with sports backgrounds? I have clients, right, and I can always tell the client who's had a sports background when I'm like,
I say this all the time.
Right, you say a cue and boom, doesn't matter what you've said to them, they've locked it in. And then there's other clients where I'm saying it, and then it goes the opposite way, and I'm like, no, do this, and I'm like pulling their elbow in and stuff like that. And I'm like, why can they not get the coordination of this? It's so crazy. Do you think it comes down to like the sports side of things, like it just being from a young age, whether it's taekwondo or gymnastics or something 100%. Like that?
There is a few outliers where you're like, oh, did you play any sport? No. Right, okay, that's theory out the door. But for the most part, you can tell if someone's done something at some point. Like the coordination, the ability to like flex the spine and things like that. Yeah, they make great clients. Yeah,
and it's so frustrating from a coaching perspective because you're really trying to get the cues to for someone who can't move their spine at all. Yeah. And you're like push that wee, see my hands here, like push against it, and like I can't. And I'm like, fuck, man, what else do I do?
I know exactly. That's that one out the window then. Cool.
So try to get it. How important is posing in bodybuilding and the clients that you've had?
It's not as important as it should be. Right. They're guys, some of the best in the world are horrendous posers, but you know, they don't judge posing per se, they judge you in the pose. But, you know, if you're not posing correctly, you can hide your physique and that could give a point away to the next guy that's next to you. So it should be scored in terms of like this guy's presentation is just say 10 out of 10. It should be scored like that, and it should tie in because in the likes of like female classes like bikini, if your posing is even remotely poor, you'll get marked down for it because they've got less to judge. You know, there's more to judge with an open bodybuilder than there is with a bikini girl. So their presentation does come into account. And if you watch them pose, like it's front, back, that's it, off. Like it don't offend anyone. It's nothing compared to bodybuilding posing.
Yeah, it's different.
But yet the amount that they practice is
For those two poses,
night
crazy.
and day compared to how much time and effort men put in. So yeah, it's one of those ones where I think men just think, I'll just wing it and see what happens. But you can always tell. It's quite. I feel a bit embarrassed for some guys that I see on stage because they're posing so poor.
Do you think it's more like a professionalism? If it's something you're going to pursue in terms of the sport,
it is the sport. Like all you do is stand on stage with fake tan on and pose. Like therefore, like you wouldn't take it back to like football. You wouldn't not learn how to dribble. So
just shoot all day type
exactly,
of thing. You feel it's just part and parcel.
So, learn how to pose.
Yeah. So I got to ask you, like growing up through bodybuilding, the new categories that are coming into the scene and arguably maybe more popular, like classic coming on, the variety of like the women's categories that's exploding. What's your thoughts on that as a whole?
I think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
I love it. Like open bodybuilding was the only category. Well, no, sorry, that's a lie. Classic bodybuilding did exist in the UKBFF with the height to weight ratio, which is what classic physique is now. But I don't know why classic physique exploded and classic bodybuilding didn't. I don't know why, but I think it's a great thing.
What was the difference between two of them?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No, it's pretty much the same thing.
It's strange,
I know, it's very strange. I think when the Americans adopted classic physique, what we called classic bodybuilding in Europe, that's when it kind of took off. In all honesty, if I could go back in time and classic physique existed, I would stay in classic physique.
I was going to ask you, like, it's like once you've kind of made your bed, you kind of need to lie in it type of thing,
like I love open bodybuilding, but let's face it, there are far more health risks with open bodybuilding than there is classic. The classic cap from my weight, some people will correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's 214.
Okay.
I was 255 on stage at my last show.
Right, so
So it's 30 pounds. 30.
Yeah.
30 pounds.
So you're pretty much there then in terms of like its size then, it just becomes a matter of like chiseling off bits in the right areas and that sort of stuff.
So it's one of those ones where the classic's not an option for me anymore, but it's a great introductory class. I think a lot of guys like it because they don't need to eat 7,000 calories and do all the other performance enhancing stuff that you do to get to that size. There's, you can live your life as a classic physique guy and still be very, very healthy and athletic. You can play football the weekend if you want. You can do whatever. As an open guy, like no chance. So it's far more appealing in that sense. I think, let's face it, like I don't do this for women, but the classic physique look, I think probably is a little bit more attractive to the opposite sex.
Yeah, so it's just like mass monsters in the open side of things.
Yeah, there's very few women that like that.
Yeah. Do you think the open category is going to ever kind of shift away from? Because there's been a wee bit of controversy over the last couple of years with it, and it's just been purely mass, as opposed to bringing in the definition, the grain, and all that sort of stuff. What's your take on that?
I think open will eventually, in the next 5 years, will just be a bigger classic. I hope it does anyway.
Just like a higher cap cut point, still the same sort of looks.
No cap, but the look they go for is similar to the classic physique look, and I think that's a good thing. Mass monsters are cool. Well, I find them cool anyway. I've been around some of them, and like for instance, I was at the Olympia last year just to watch, and Michael Crizo was training next to me in Iron Religion, and I remember me and my girlfriend at the time were just looking at him like, what even is that? That's not a human being.
What is it like seeing these Olympians?
It's like seeing an alien.
Is it?
It's like seeing an alien, or like going into a zoo and just seeing like a silverback that's like 500 pounds.
I think from a human nature, we're always going to want to see the top of the top. Like if there's a category for the mass monsters, like you said, it's very hard for that to be scaled away from, because
it will always be the pinnacle.
Yeah,
it will always be the pinnacle. But classic physique, it probably is. Like not everyone, but a lot of people know who Chris Bumstead is. Not many people know who Hadi Chupin is. So if you go down the street, if you go to, I'd just say a commercial gym like JD and say who's C-Bum, they'll know. Say who's Hadi Chupin, they won't. Most guys won't know who that is. But
crazy, isn't it?
He's the best physique in the world. Oh, sorry, Derek Lumsford is, but that was last year. But yeah, people wouldn't know. Just
by like what's more like socially accepted.
Yeah.
What's your take on people like following the people like C-Bum and their workouts and their splits and that sort of thing? Do you think that's a good thing for these young guys to do, or do you think they should kind of do something else?
No, I think it is. I think C-Bum's pretty transparent. He shows you exactly what he's done. Like, he's still dumbbell presses, still squats, still deadlifts. He's had to tweak things with injury, but there's videos of C-Bomb squatting over 300 kilo, and I think that's a great thing. I think the issues we have is from not necessarily coaches, but people who are putting stuff on Instagram and TikTok and stuff, and they're trying to be different. They're trying to stand out. Like, there's only so many times you can talk about a dumbbell press.
I was gonna like, would you think of the whole buzz with movements and like lat variations and all these different things? Do you think we have found some new science on certain lifts, or do you think we've overlooked like some of the most fundamental compound lifts? Like,
there's definitely, so those kind of movements, they 100% have a place. They definitely do, on a physique that already has muscle. So if you're focusing on single arm, upside down, reverse banded lat pull down, you should be doing your barbell rows first. Building an actual back, and then looking at your back and going, right, well, I'm missing the lower lat. Maybe I need to focus on a movement that is a little bit more isolated. Fair enough. But you shouldn't be just jumping straight into these. Like, if I was, my back session just now is a lat pull down, free weight row, another row, a dumbbell row, and a deadlift. That's still to this day what I do. And
people will be like, what else?
Yeah.
It's like,
that's it.
This was plenty.
And then people are like, why do you put deadlifts at the end? I was like, well, because I want to I want to put as much energy into the rows as possible, because my lower back and my hamstrings are pretty good. So I don't need to deadlift first. So that's where that comes from. So,
what feedback have you got off the back of your last show in terms of areas that you need to improve?
I need to be harder, conditioning wise, and fuller, which has always been my problem since I was 19. My metabolism, I would say, is pretty good. So towards the end, when you've got no body fat at all, I really struggle to fill my physique out, because there's an element of carbon up into the show. And I'm lucky I've got my current coach, Nick, who knows me very, very well. So we did push food a lot harder this time round.
How long you worked with?
Started working with Nick in 2015. So I was
wow. Cool.
Yeah. I've worked with Patrick Turin between 2020 2021. But I've been with Nick since I was 22, and now 32. So we still haven't quite figured out how to get like burst and round full. But I think we presented something that was very, very good at that show there. It's just mad metabolism, and also every time you add a pound of muscle, your metabolism changes in some way.
It's gone more efficient and burning more. Like,
exactly, yeah. So, I mean, my diet for these shows this past season were by no means low. Like,
what are you cutting down to? Like,
from 7,000, I think the lowest I got on my training day was 3-1.
That is nuts. Because I'm sure in one of C-Bum's reps, like he was saying that one of the vlogs I remember watching was like 1,900 one time. I think he went relatively low.
The difference with C-Bum is he can't push up to 7,000
of course, yeah,
calories
because he's got the weight cap. Yeah.
So he can't push as hard as I can. So that's probably why. So if his
more aggressive of a cut.
Yeah, so if his peak calories at the off season are 4,000, they're ultimately going to end up lower than mine. But it's all relative. So with mine, that's 4,000 calories off that I've taken. So yeah.
Oh, cool. So I want to get into maybe something that's maybe a wee bit controversial in terms of the judging when it comes to you've done 26 shows. So I'd love to ask you this question. Is there politics that play when it comes to judging, from a favouritism for sponsors, who's got the biggest backing, who's got the biggest social media following? I hear this from many different podcasts that I listen to, and I always wonder, like, is that just the saltiness from someone else, or is there a bit of legitimacy to it?
There is a bit of truth to it.
Right.
But, like, for instance, if you're doing a Scottish regional show and you get beat by a guy and then you claim politics, you're looking for an excuse. It's.
Do you think home always favours, like, in a way? Like, because I've actually been at a few boxing fights and stuff like that, and they spoke to a couple of guys and they fought away from home, and they're like, I won that fight and I lost in points. The judges definitely favoured that. Is it similar to that, Jake?
So the example I'll use is, if you've got 5 judges and just say 2 of them know someone on stage, they're not allowed to be like, he's the winner, I'll put it on my sheet because the lowest and the highest scores are taken off to make it as fair as possible. What happens is...
Oh, are they? I never knew that.
Yeah.
Right, okay, right.
So what happens is when you're on stage, if you're, just say you're a judge, if you're looking up at someone and you know them, your eye's going to come back to them naturally.
Yeah, it's biased.
Like you could be the most unbiased person on the planet, but it's the simple fact you know that person or whatever.
They stand out to you more than
they
anyone
stand
else,
out to more, even if they're the worst person on stage, because you know it's a familiar face. It's just human nature.
Yeah, I like. You're right, because it's if you know someone, you see them by Cannon Street, you don't see anyone else.
Yeah,
they stand out because you just recognise their face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's an aspect of that. So if you want to call that favoritism, then yeah, that definitely happens. That definitely happens. But that's human nature at the end of the day. So, but as for like, he trains at a certain gym, therefore I'm going to mark him down. There's 5 other judges. They don't know that. So I think when people do kind of put out these comments about politics and stuff like that, there is a saltiness there, in my opinion. Like, what I say to clients is, cool, if you've got 5 judges who all know people in your class, just make sure your lights out the best then. Like, then there's no question. So again, I don't use myself as an example, but it's a pretty good example of Spain. So on the judging panel, there was 3 of the 5 judges were Spanish. The guy that I was compared to the most was Spanish, and you could tell they just really, really wanted to put him in first because it was round after round after round after round. And my mates were like, "What are they doing here? Like, what are they judging?"
A clear winner to them.
And they were just like, they're desperately trying to find holes in my physique compared to him. So that definitely does happen. But I think
ultimately the best physique does win. How hard? I always wonder about this, because judging a physique can be, it's very hard to make it objective. I know it can, because you're looking at there's also a scorecard and points and that sort of stuff. How do you think we're judges in the UK in particular, or the shows that you've been to? It's a fair setup with how they set it up, like swapping them out or having the right panel in there? Yeah,
for the most part. So the federation I competed with as an amateur is called Two Bros. So they're the NPC of Britain. And the judges are not allowed to be coaches. Right. So that's a good thing there. There are other federations, which I'm probably not allowed to say publicly, but there are coaches on the judging panel, and that's completely unacceptable. That should not be allowed. Again, you could be the most ethical, unbiased person on the planet. You will look at your client more than others. That's just, I would, 100% I would. Yeah. So it should be a flat out rule. You're not allowed to be a coach and a judge. That's just does not make sense, because this also happens where you have potential clients going, I need to go to X coach because he's a judge. People do think like that. They definitely do think like that. Like, it happens, not to be sexist, but I think it happens more with females. Like, I have to go to that posing coach because she's a judge. I have to go to that prep coach because she's a judge. So,
why do you think they do it? Do you think it's just because the monetary side of things and it's not that much, or do you think
think people judge because they love bodybuilding, and I truly believe that even these judges / coaches that I'm talking about, they genuinely want to be judges. They genuinely do. They're not doing it for sinister reasons. That I know of, the ones that I know of. But you should not be a judge and a coach at the same time. It's either or.
For bodybuilding in the amateur leagues, is there anything that you think, from an operation standpoint, like how it operates, that could be done better, like from the shows that you've done? Is there anything that, if you could have your own federation run it just by waving a wand, how would it be run? Is there any changes?
There's good and bad points of every federation in Britain. Okay. So you've got Two Bros, PCA. I wouldn't say not. Let's just go Two Bros and PCA. They're the two biggest federations in the UK. PCA atmosphere is incredible. I don't know if you've watched.
I went to PCA I think you had a bunch of clients in Motherwell.
Yeah.
I think Extreme sponsored that one. Way back when.
Yeah, so
7-8 years ago.
The atmosphere at PCA shows is incredible.
It's packed out.
Yeah, it's packed out. I love that side of things. Whereas Two Bros, it's a little bit more, in my opinion, a little bit more polished, a touch more professional, but they don't seem to have the same like atmosphere at their shows. But they're still good shows. They are run really well, but every federation has things that I would change from atmosphere to not having coaches as judges, a whole variety of things.
Yeah. So in terms of a popularity point of view, you've got the wave of high rocks, the functional training, hybrid athletes. Again, we're only talking like 3-4 years. This is like the new hype. Bodybuilding definitely dominated the scene, more so the era that you and I have grown up from.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen any hybrid trainer when I was in my teens and my early 20s.
Yeah.
You seen the odd guy that ran and lifted weights, but usually a wee bit strange and just like to do everything, didn't they? But now that certainly seems to be the hype, and a big part of it, I think, is driven with the community and it's low barrier to entry. Do you think bodybuilding's dying out, or do you think it's just there's more people coming into fitness?
No, not at all. I think there's just more bodies in fitness now. And it's a good thing. We have all these different things you can compete in: high rocks, CrossFit, bodybuilding, just a whole amalgam of things. I think it's amazing. Obviously, being a coach yourself, you know the impact that obesity and stuff like that has on the Scottish and the British population, and
just how inactive we are.
Yeah, I think if anyone can find anything that they enjoy doing this activity wise, if you want to walk 100,000 steps a day, fair play. That's what you want to do. But people need to find something, and it's good we have so many different things. But bodybuilding and competing is definitely way more popular than it was when I started.
Oh yeah.
Way more popular. Far more people do it. There's more classes to do. So men have, if we're talking about NPC, we have men's physique, classic physique, and open, and then
where does muscle model come into?
Is that
just like a more?
Have that?
Is that just?
Yes, that's what I mean. Is
whatever UKIP?
They
still going?
Those kind of federations, the smaller federations tend to have more classes to try and just involve more people, which I think is a brilliant thing.
Yeah, it's a stepping stone, isn't it?
But if we're talking about NPC, those are the three men's, and then women's is bikini, wellness, figure, fitness, physique, and bodybuilding. So they've got 6 that people can fall into. So there's more options within bodybuilding, and there's more options out with bodybuilding. Sorry. So I think that's a great thing, and it's going to be really exciting over the next 10 years to see the Scottish scene
evolve more.
Yeah, definitely.
Who are you seeing kind of come through the ranks just now that you're excited to see what they do from? Anyone that you see? Obviously yourself.
Amateurs.
Yeah, obviously yourself is kind of leading the way just now. But
so one of my pals, Jack, who does our podcast, Jack Gunn. I think his potential is out of this world. Like if he can figure it out, which I'm sure him and his coach Greg, who's one of my best mates, I'm sure if they can figure it out, he'll be. I think he could be top 5 Olympian.
Oh really?
Like just look at his structure. Yeah. He came to me for posing when he was a junior. I was just like, I was blown away by him. He's just phenomenal. We've got Josh Dougal as well. He's only 22. He looks like a young Jay Cutler. Brad, I don't know what Brad's doing competitively, but he's really good in the Scottish scene. There's Greg Taylor. Max Johnson's already a pro. Adam and Gaz from Flex Unit. There is a lot of good bodies in Scottish bodybuilding that could go very, very far. So
putting it on the map.
Yeah. In terms of the pro scene, I think right now you're probably looking at like I said, Samson is probably going to dominate and win the Olympia one day. So obviously he's from down south, but it's the British bodybuilding has always been very, very strong. I mean, I was growing up with Graham. He used to tell me all these stories about all these from the 90s and the 80s and stuff like that, and I was just like in awe at some of these things. So bodybuilding's very strong in Britain, and it always has been, always will. So I think outside of America, I think the UK is the biggest bodybuilding hub in the world. You got the Middle East and stuff like that, but
what's your take on that? Is it's kind of just, am I right in saying that's just more of a recent years that they've just started taking over a wee bit more? So I remember like Regan and all that going out for a prep, and they wanted them up to like 300 pounds.
Oh,
and
you
was
talking
like,
about the Middle East?
Yeah.
All right, yeah. The Middle East has always had a very strong bodybuilding scene, but like with the money that's kind of piling in from other things, obviously like oil and stuff like that, there's a lot of capital there to build the best gyms and things like that. And there's a lot of incredible guys that come out of the Middle East, but I think Britain's got the Middle East, to be honest, in terms of just everything about us.
Yeah, for what we've got.
Yeah.
Cool. Getting your IFBB Pro card, that must have been like, we dived into it like it was a grind and eventually achieving that. What do you think of like the IFBB pro scene in terms of men's physique and classic, where would you, I don't like using the word easier because it's not necessarily easy, but getting a pro card, it was like I was getting all these, I was connecting with a lot of like fitness people, and every second person was like a men's physique IFBB pro, like in America, and obviously they've got more opportunities to become an IFBB pro. Why is it the same opportunity here, or do you think if you were born in America you would have got that card sooner?
That's a tough one. So in terms of the amount of people that compete in the world within the IFBB, only 1% of those competitors will get a pro card. Right. Now, I don't know if that statistic is that year or in their whole career. I'm not sure. So that's something there. But, I mean, it depends. Like, I always wanted to win my pro card at a huge, highly competitive show.
Yeah.
And not maybe a pro qualifier that maybe only had a few numbers in it.
And that's really what that's what I meant to ask there, like kind of picking your show and choosing your show, like it's like the shiny object syndrome, like you want that, but at the same time you're like, but I want it to be fair game in terms of the competition that I have for it.
Yeah, I wanted to win against guys who are really, really good, and that top six at that Alicante show was scary. There was one guy, I think he was German, he was so big they couldn't even tan him in the tent. They had to tan him outside of the tent. I remember standing there thinking, what am I looking at? Like, again, like just in awe, like that's not a human being. So I've been quite fortunate over the years to have competed against some really, really good guys. But basically for myself is I wanted to prove to myself that I could win my pro card within a stacked lineup, and that's kind of a good pretense to then go into the pro league and then potentially do well one day there as well. So
do you think those who don't necessarily have a stacked lineup, do you think that kind of hinders them because it's sort of like that was just the goal, they never had any aspirations to take it further?
Maybe not within open.
It's probably more with the less categories.
So see, to win as a heavyweight or super heavyweight, that takes years, like a long time. Within classic and men's physique, maybe there is more of an attitude to just do a quieter pro qualifier and just get your card.
Get your pro card,
But for most guys that do open, we tend to aim for as hard a show as humanly possible, because you're right back to the bottom. There's only 15 guys in the whole world that actually do really well in terms of winning shows, maybe 15 to 20. So you're up against it as an open guy. So there's probably more of the attitude like mine that you want to go and win your card at a decent show. But I know plenty of people who are just like, doesn't matter where you win your card, just get the card. And
I think it's still an impressive pursuit, but
I think regardless of what show it is, it's
it might be even Flex Wheeler. I heard in a podcast, and he was the one throwing shade at it. He's like, you've got all these fucking smaller federations, and they're just giving out IFBB pro cards, I think was the comment he made. And I thought, that's a bit of a shit statement to fucking put out there to somebody that's spent a lot of time. But then that's why I wanted to ask. I wasn't sure.
Back in his day, there was only one pro card.
Yeah, it was premium.
Exactly.
Cream of the crop.
Yeah, you had to win the American Nationals. Only one person got it. Whereas I think in each class there's 3 pro cards. I could be wrong. It's either 2 or 3. So first and second in supers get a pro card. First and second in heavies get a pro card. And then there's more than one pro qualifier as well. So I personally don't think it dilutes it, because you're not the people who perhaps do an easier pro qualifier and get their card, they'll never do anything.
Yeah, well, exactly. So, like time will tell, isn't it?
Exactly.
It's like, you change your Instagram bio, but at the same time, if you're not kind of competed with it,
so it doesn't dilute the scene, in my opinion. So if you want to do an easier show and just get your card, and that's that, fair play to you. But I've kind of got aspirations, to do well as a pro, and I wanted to do an insanely hard show just to prove to myself, really.
Yeah.
So even my coach was just like, just go do the Azerbaijan Classic. I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to win like a tough show. So
kind of highlights the integrity that you've got as a competitor though as well, and I think that's testament to your mindset and that sort of stuff. How much do you want that Arnold Classic show again?
So I think, I've said it publicly anyway, I think I could win an Arnold Classic one day with my structure, my height. I'm never going to be the biggest guy, but I tend to be one of the better shaped guys.
So talk about that, because I think for people listening, they think, oh, surely the biggest guy wins, and It's not quite that simple. Like
No.
what does it take to win a bodybuilding show?
In terms of my class, so open bodybuilding, you have to be the biggest while also being the leanest, the most complete. At that level, presentation probably does come into it a wee bit, but you have to have everything, not just one thing. Like, you can be a fridge if you want, but if you've got a 40-inch waist, you're not going to win the Olympia. Like, that's not how it works for a pro show. So there still has to be an aspect of aesthetics, balance, symmetry, all these wee kind of things. And yeah, so that's still like the way it's done. It's just that the amalgam of everything.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the things you're obviously crafting as you're going through your journey.
Yeah.
And it's great to see that. Like, I think it's amazing to watch how over 26 shows it's like, right, I want to do better. I want to do better. Can we talk about like longevity in the sport? So would you say inherently bodybuilding is a healthy pursuit?
No.
Wheezing and all that sort of stuff.
How
How do you manage that? Because it's like a sport. Any athlete, I would argue, isn't quote unquote healthy.
No, that's what I was just about to say. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. There's no sport that's done at a decent level that is healthy. Bodybuilding is probably just a little bit more down that scale.
It's just emphasised because it's a bit a package that you get roped up at the end.
Yeah.
But,
so yeah, like blood work, visits to a cardiologist every year, calcium scores and scans, spending hundreds on health supplements, massage, just everything, just to make sure that
literally putting your body through the trenches.
Yeah. So if I can do this, so I'm 32. If I can do this, I said I'd stop at 40.
Right.
I don't think that's going to happen. If I could do this until I'm 45, I think it'd be a very, very good run.
Who's some of the oldest bodybuilders still competing? Was Dexter Jackson? Was he one of the oldest?
50 by the time he stopped.
Was he? Who else did you have? I think he's the only one that really stands out to me.
Sean, Mr. Olympia. What's Sean's second?
Ray Roden. Yeah.
Sean Roden was 43, I think, when he won the Olympia for the first time. The peak age now for the Olympians, other than a few outliers, is I think it's between 35 and 42, something along those lines. That's when guys are peaking. You don't necessarily peak nowadays in this era in your late 20s, mid 20s. Now there are pros that are very, very good at that age, like Nick Walker's.
Oh yeah,
a couple of years younger than me.
What's it like when you're exposed to this on social media and you're seeing, or you probably seen him? Yeah, you met him in person. And that, what is that like?
That's when you're like
genetics.
I know.
No, I'm
kidding. No, that is the eye opener that I think a lot of guys need. If you do want to take this sport really, really far, you need to stand next to some of these people and realize just what you're up against. And I've been lucky enough that I've done that from almost the beginning. So at my first British, James Hollingshead was in my call out.
Right.
So I stood next to him, and I remember feeling so embarrassed standing next to him because even when he was 23, I was 20 at the time. He was a monster, and I needed that. I was like, right, I'm obviously not big enough to win a British then. He didn't even win that class either. It was Jack Stokel who won that, and he was even bigger than him.
Wow.
So I needed that kick up the arse to be like, you're not big enough, so go away and get big enough and come back.
Yeah, I can imagine like if your circle of people is like your friends from uni and all that sort of thing, like, oh, you're massive, mate, you're massive, and then you go toe to toe with someone's like, wow, small fish in a big pond.
It's always we speak about this, it's very easy to be the diamond in a pure gym. You know what I mean? So no offense to people who go pure gym, but if you are going to do a contest prep out of a pure gym, I think that's going to mess with your head. It's going to make you think you're better than you actually are. And I personally, my attitude is be in an environment where you've got millions of physiques around you that are phenomenal. That's far more beneficial for you to realise just the level you should be at. And I was, again, very lucky to meet certain people who were just very, very blunt. So I don't know if we'll touch on this at all, but Graham's like, what federation do you want to do? And I was like, at the time, UKPFF. And he's like, do you take anabolics? I was like, no. He's like, you won't win then.
Oh really? Was it that simple?
Yeah.
So I did want to come on to like, that's why I'm asking about the longevity side of things. So what age are you kind of going back to, like when you have opened your eyes up and you're like, okay, I kind of need to go down performance enhancement drugs. Did you know about them first of all, like during like rugby days and that sort of stuff? Does that make its way into the?
Not from a rugby point of view. They are involved in rugby, but not at that level.
Yeah.
So I always knew that they were on stuff. It never bothered me that the physiques I look up to used that, because I don't know. Even from a very early age, I kind of knew that they still put in a graft to look like that. So it never bothered me in that front. But I also the look of natural bodybuilding doesn't appeal to me. Now, don't get me wrong, it takes nothing away from natural competitors. I've got natural clients. I've had a lot of natural clients do very, very well. But that's not how I want to look on stage. I want it to be bigger than that, harder than that. And I knew going down the anabolic route, the PED route, is what I'd have to do.
Yeah. Did you get caught up in any of the fake natty stuff when you were looking at inspiration in the sport? Because there's 2 years of difference between us, and I still, like, I knew the open bodybuilder classic, like the physiques that I was looking at, I knew they were on PEDs, but then I was getting caught into this whole Simeon Panda, Ulysses Junior, Lazar, and they were all claiming natty, and I was like, right, okay, that's the physique I want. I like the mass monsters. I'd love to look like them, but I don't know if I'm ready to kind of take that leap when it comes to PED. So I'll go after this physique and going, oh, is it because I missed 2 workouts and didn't drink a protein shake? Is that why I don't look like that? Did you get caught up in it?
If you take anabolics and PEDs and claim you're natural, like, you're a dick. Like,
I think it's so bizarre. Do you see it happening in our space?
Not necessarily. Definitely not in my space. But to be honest, like, the people who Simeon Panda, to me, he has no influence on me. I admire his physique. His physique's incredible, but it doesn't bother me that he claims natty. If that makes sense. But like I said, if you have people who aren't natural, who claim they are, and then they're trying to sell stuff, there's
it's unethical,
so many implications there. And then people who do natural shows who use gear or any other PED, that's flat out cheating. Like, the brilliant thing about bodybuilding is we've got the option. If you want to take every drug under the world, you can go to a federation that allows it or doesn't test for it, is more the better wording for that. So I don't understand why anyone would.
I've never understood it as well.
That's so strange.
Do you think it's like ego driven? It's like
I think you're a bit of a narcissist if you do natural bodybuilding and take any.
Were you ever kind of nervous to be open about it? Because I think I was growing up I think the only guy I remember being open about their use was Rich Piana.
Yeah.
He kind of lay the groundwork to
met Rich twice.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
What was that like? Just as nuts in person, is it?
Yeah. Maybe when I was younger, a bit more hesitant to tell people, but nowadays, with the amount of information we have, the transparency we have, obviously fake natties aside, I think you kind of obligated to talk about that. To be honest, it doesn't bother me if people want to judge me for taking stuff. Judge me all you want. That doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. I'd rather people who are actually interested in it, who are maybe thinking about it, listen to me, who's open and honest about it. I've made the mistakes. I've done this. I've done that.
What was it? So I actually want to get into this. Like, what is some of the kind of mistakes that you would class that you made earlier on? Do you think, did you get caught up in the whole take more?
Yeah.
Get more?
100%. Yeah, 100%. So
I think everybody does, eh?
Yeah, in terms of the 2013 British, I was probably on 5 more things than I was at that show that I won my pro card.
Okay.
So that kind of shows you just the...
What supplements, what PEDs are you getting caught up in? Is it the standard stuff? Or are you getting like, is it like the hard stuff like training, all that sort of things?
No, it's more so like the ancillaries. So like I would use, like, we have what are called AIs, which is aromatase inhibitors. So I'd be using Arimidex, and then you'd be using like another form of AI, just because I thought they'd done different things and they don't. Things like that, just taking...
Do you think it was a placebo thing as well?
Possibly, yeah. Taking 3 orals, 4 orals when they all kind of do the same thing. Stuff like that. And I do get people, fellow competitors actually, who I tell them what I'm on, they're like, "What? Why?" Yeah. So
is it from like you find that you are...
I'm very moderate.
Lower dosage, and then what what other
I'm not
folk would
low,
think.
but I'm moderate,
Yeah.
I would say, in terms of what I've seen from other people.
Is it like a unspoken rule or like a hidden rule not to like fully disclose your whole stack, or is that just something that, because it's very individualised, like people are responsive
I think
in
it comes
different
down
ways.
to the person. Like, I'd be happy to tell you what I'm on. Well, at my peak for that show, I think some people are more reluctant, to tell you exactly what they're on.
Because you have PED coaches and all that now, trying to
Yeah, you have people who
monetize it.
specifically only do PEDs.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, because they're devoting their whole life to
All their knowledge
understanding
to
it.
that.
Yeah.
And there's guys, hands in the air. There's definitely guys out there who know way more than I do about the science behind it and stuff like that. And when you listen to them talk, you're like, that goes over my head. If I'm being honest, it's the least. I told you about my passion for this. It's the topic I'm least passionate about is anabolics and PEDs. I just need to know what I react well to, and that's it. Other than that, I don't really care about the science. I don't really care what's new, what's the recurring trend, etc.
So see, when you curious to like understand your decision when you go from like natural. So when do you make that shift actually? Sorry.
So start training when I was 16. Done my first cycle leading up to my first show. So I'd be 19 going on 20.
Right. And looking back at that, would your advice have changed any different knowing what you know now? Would you have kind of hold it off a wee bit longer or just changed the stack that you went on? Or
other than the 2014 season, I don't have any regrets in bodybuilding of what I've done. But if I did have a time machine, I probably would do a season naturally, even though what I just said about not looking up to that kind of physique, just to test the water and see if I actually did enjoy bodybuilding and competing and standing on stage. Luckily, I did. But at the time, I didn't know I would. So I think maybe if I could go back in time, I'd do a season naturally.
I'd like to see like where, what the potential is and sort of stuff.
That decision to do it then has led to where I am now.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't really kind of look back on it as any regrets.
Snowball effect.
And my health, from what appears on paper, seems pretty good.
Yeah.
So.
Have you had any like bad reactions, anything?
I had really bad acne late 2020.
Right.
I had no spots through puberty. I had really good skin all through puberty. And then literally one day I got in my car, put my seatbelt on. I was like, my chest is so sore. I couldn't have the seatbelt across my chest. And then I noticed all these like purple bits coming up through the skin. And eventually it became acne. It was excruciating. It was all down my face. I still got a scar on my face from it. Yeah. No idea where it came from. I'd used anabolics for 8 years on and off up until that point. Not an issue ever. Like I said, I had great skin when I was going through puberty and it just came out of nowhere. So I had to kind of find how to adjust that.
Fine tune it, yeah.
And I would get a spot now and again, but it's nothing.
Do you think that was like a bad substance or maybe just an off one? Or
potentially, but that's probably the worst in terms of sides. If we're looking at blood work, my cholesterol's been skewed quite a bit, but I've corrected that since. That's probably the two.
What by doing what?
Eating better sources of food.
Yeah. So
rather than buying like supermarket chicken, I'd buy butcher chicken when I could eat chicken, just using that as an example. Things like that, using free range eggs or organic eggs compared to just caged hens.
Right, okay.
You notice that in blood work. You'll notice on blood work someone's cholesterol being skewed if they eat caged hens, eggs every single day. So
one thing I've said in the show many times is like getting your blood panel done is an important factor, regardless whether you're in a sport like bodybuilding or anything. Yeah. It's like an MOT check, and I actually like it as a good way to notice if you make a change nutritionally, what that can affect in terms of your blood markers. Yeah. So is that what you've noticed like in the biggest time, kind of going like more organic-y type, like whole food type things?
The example there I gave was eggs, going down that route. So
interesting.
Organic, and then going down the route of buying butcher meat rather than supermarket meat, things like that. Making sure I eat quite a lot of salmon, so making sure the salmon comes from a particular source rather than a farm, things like that. That does make a huge difference. Whatever the animal eats is going into you. So just remember that.
Yeah. So I guess the most common question you get when you're on gear is like, oh yeah, I could look like that if I take gear. How true is that?
Not true at all.
Nah.
not remotely. So I've said like...
What would you say in terms of percentages that gear plays a part in terms of the role?
I really don't know in terms of percentages. Like,
I guess it's hand in hand, isn't it? You need the intensity, you need the programming, you need the nutrition.
Yeah. If we're talking about untested bodybuilding, it's all 100%. You need You need PEDs and anabolics to do well and open. There are some classic pros who are natural. Bob Waterhouse is one of them, but they're few and far between. So it's all part of the whole picture. It's whole part of the whole picture. Unfortunately, depends how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
I will make this argument that natural bodybuilding is just slightly less unhealthy than tested. For instance, if you're a natural bodybuilder, you're going to tank your testosterone.
That's a very fair point.
It takes a long time for that to come back when you're not using exogenous hormones. Some may argue that's...
And usually what happens on a prep, there's a ton of intensity. There's it's like every point is getting squeezed, and hormonally, you don't have the backup or the safety net of, like you said, exogenous compound in your body to fight you through it. Yeah,
I mean, using compounds, like, for instance, a lot of people do use Tren, people do use a lot of orals and stuff like that. They do skew health markers more than a natural would using nothing, but it depends how you want to look at it.
Yeah.
That front, so.
Do you think steroids are abused?
Yeah, 100%. So my attitude towards them, hand on heart, if I didn't compete, I would not be using anything. I would not be using anything. No, but I've had 12 years experience of using them, so that's almost looked at in almost hindsight. It does. I'm a bit scared about where we're going to be in 10 years' time. There are guys and girls who are on stuff who have no idea what it is, who have no foundation whatsoever. Their nutrition's shocking. They can't train. They have no idea what it takes to remotely put in effort, and they're all already on stuff. It's
like half-arsing it, and it's like you're not earned your stripes. So you think that's like that's the important step, is like you're gaining consistent, you're proving that you can be disciplined, you're in the right headspace and all these sort of things before you make that leap.
You need to learn how to train, learn how to eat, and then you can think about that. And you need to have a good foundation behind you as well. So I call it a drug body. So that, again, that goes back to the bodybuilding. I can look at someone and know that they're just built purely from drugs. And it's like the skin texture, it's the lack of symmetry to the physique. They just look unhealthy as well. So
saying the symmetry it's actually brought a few people to mind. So I'm like, all they ever do is their upper body, and they've put some amount of mass on, so it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? It does make sense.
Like recreational use of anabolics, I think is
quite scary, isn't it?
Pretty pointless, to be honest. I do know why they're doing it, but they shouldn't.
So the other part of like longevity and we kind of opened this question up with, is bodybuilding healthy? So we're speaking about obviously your hormonal impact, the training impact, all the wear and tear. What about psychological? So you mentioned like these binge episodes, you're constantly looking in front of the mirror. This is another part that's kind of unspoken about. Do you believe you kind of created a more enhanced body dysmorphia than the average person then? And is that something you either have to cope with for the rest of your life now, or just get better at managing it?
Yeah. If you want to put a label on it, I 100% have body dysmorphia. I don't see what you see, but like, do you think Usain Bolt wants to be faster and faster and faster? I want to be bigger and more shredded. I think it just so happens that bodybuilding is tied to body image. There's a far clearer line there of what is dysmorphia and what is a poor mental outlook on your own physique. But I think every athlete has, I wouldn't label it as body dysmorphia, I label it as just wanting to be a perfectionist. And I hope that when this is all over, I don't have those same emotional ties, and that it was purely the sport that drove me to it. I didn't have them before I started training. I didn't start training out of vanity, so that is a positive for myself. But if you do already have dysmorphia, bodybuilding will 100% make it worse. But you know that going in, and people like to, usually former competitors like to ridicule bodybuilding and said, it gave me this, it gave me that. You knew the risks going in. That might sound harsh, but if you feel it gave you an eating disorder or a mental disorder towards your body image, you knew that going in.
Yeah,
it's not an unknown thing.
Why do you think people do go into bodybuilding? Do you think they go in purely, or there's a big wave of people going in for vanity, for social status, for I don't know, proving to themselves that they can change, or I would imagine proving to themselves that they can change is probably a smaller percentage of people who would then carry some of these things that you said.
Yeah, so I think the vast majority of people who choose to compete generally want to go through the challenge of doing so.
Right.
And it is probably one of the hardest things you can possibly do.
Absolutely, yeah. But why? Why do you think that is driver from social media, social status, attention, or do you genuinely think it is a love for the sport?
I would say the majority is a love for training.
Yeah.
A love for eating right, feeling good. I think that generally comes from that. To be honest, like this sport is so hard. You're deliberately starving yourself. So, to do it for status, I don't think you'll last very long anyway. I don't think that's enough of a motivator.
Do you not see that though? I can count several PTs, myself included, actually, like they done a show, came off the back of it, and I wasn't PTing through this, but my peers that were on the same show as me, they went into PT and they started coaching people to do bodybuilding. There was a whole wave, and it's cool that it gets people in, as you said, but I just wonder, like, all of that, was that driving from trying to gain more clients? Was it trying to get more vein and all that sort of stuff?
Potentially. Maybe it was. Maybe it was a way of displaying what you're able to do yourself, and then obviously trying to inspire potential and current clients. I started competing before I was a PT or a coach. I genuinely love training. Like, training is all I think about all day, all night, before I go to bed. I can't switch off from it. And competing to me is a side effect of training. I would still train. I probably wouldn't eat the same way I do. I would definitely eat less food than I do if I didn't compete. But I still eat right. I still have a regimented meal plan. I genuinely love the lifestyle. And there are people who compete who don't really care for it much, but other than maybe gaining clients and trying to, propel their business, I don't think many last very long.
Oh no, I think trade-off in terms of time, like, there's about 10 other different things you can do to gain the clientele that you maybe want.
And don't get me wrong, competing and having the status I have as a pro, and I'm also a PCA pro, has definitely pulled business my way. So there is that tie. And when I done my shoulder in, there was that kind of fear of, shit, if I can't compete, like, how am I going to drive people in? But I'd find another way. To show people, right, if you're towing your shoulder, this is how you train. And maybe I generally thought about, off the back of that, if I have to give up competing, my thing would be to show guys who have used a lot of anabolics in the past how to document and come off them, and how to go down that route. Essentially, I think that would be.
Have you ever had gaps yourself then, like, in terms of, like, how would you change up your, like, cycle and that sort of stuff? Would you have?
So when I was younger, again, it was only 15 years ago, but the knowledge and the information was still pretty poor. I would come off for so just say my last show would be October. I wouldn't go back until February. That's off, like nothing at all, not even.
Is it a hard stop as well?
Hard stop, cold turkey, I would do that every year. I only stopped doing that when I was 27, so 2019.
And it's just changing, it's the phase, I guess, that you're in.
I was like, I'm holding more muscle mass now. I need to be as efficient with my time as possible. Therefore, I need to kind of go down to cruise doses, if you want to call them that, or TRT doses.
What does that look like?
Usually, true TRT or testosterone replacement therapy is between 100 and 150 milligram per week for most.
So I take that about that just now. I got my bloods done. I tried to work on them for 2 years, try to get them up from what they're considering. I'm in a healthy space, but I'm fucking 108. Like that. Mate, that's not healthy. That's like the bottom of the range. So I decided to kind of just do that myself. But I actually want to work with someone through that, with a medical practitioner, and actually go through the proper TRT side of things.
So roughly that's where, like, true TRT is. Bodybuilding TRT is probably sitting between 200 and 300 milligram per week. So I take 300 milligram per week of testosterone in between phases. So I've come out of contest prep phase. I now go into a off-season phase in September. So just now I'm just running 300 milligram of testosterone a week, split up to 2 doses a week, and nothing else. Well, tell them starting metformin, but they're not exactly considered kind of.
Is peptides making its way in with the whole kind of rise and all these different things? Are they getting? I know they're getting utilized more in America. So has that made its way over to the UK at all?
Peptides have been around for forever.
no peptides. What is that? I'm thinking.
SARMs.
SARMs. Aye.
So SARMs in the UK are probably a little bit more prolific with women than men. I've never used a SARM. Obviously, I've used anabolics. They're the
I always wondered why you would go like dip your toe in, like if it's something you're committed to, like go with the thing we know the most information on.
Exactly.
Like
so,
most amount of studies, we know clear side effects.
Yeah. So my thought process is that SARMs have no, like you said, that I know of, clinical research, clinical trials. We've got anabolics were being developed in the 50s, even probably before that as well. We've got a lot of knowledge on how testosterone works within both male and female bodies. Like, for instance, the drug Mastron was used for breast cancer. So that's an anabolic steroid. We know how all that works from clinical trial. There's very few things in terms of anabolic steroids that we are a little bit hazy about. SARMs, we know relatively nothing. Peptides were relatively nothing other than growth hormone. So yeah, it's
a few TikTok videos.
Aye, exactly. So I think I understand the appeal of SARMs. You can take them orally. People don't want to inject themselves with stuff. I totally understand why you might go down that route first. But like you said, you know, it's like taking an Ecki on a night out. Like, you don't know what's in it. So yeah.
You don't know. You don't really know what you're getting. One other thing I did want to ask you, like, just on the subject of like taking performance enhancement, do you think you'll need to be on some sort of TRT, knowing it depends how your body reacts to testosterone, that sort of stuff. Do you think that'll be it's kind of what you've committed to for life now?
Yeah, definitely. I came to peace with that a long time ago. I kind of knew that was going to be the case because obviously I'd heard of other bodybuilders being on TRT in their 40s and 50s, so I know that's going to be the case. But I've made my peace with it. That doesn't really bother me.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Are you someone that wants to be a father one day and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Does it ever worry you like with that? Because there's a few scares, isn't there? Like,
I'll be lying if I said it didn't. And as much as I do want to be a dad one day, if anabolics and anabolic use has scuppered that, I made my peace. I think I can make my peace with it because the life that bodybuilding's given me is. I could never have dreamed of having this life. So it's one of those ones where I've got a massive positive out of it. And if I can squeeze literally one more positive out of it, then that's always a plus. But if not, I think I'll make my peace with it. Yeah.
I think when C-Bum announced that he was going to be done, I think everybody was like, whew, we'll be all right then.
Exactly, yeah. And I know plenty of guys who have conceived while on daft amounts of stuff. So and
they probably weren't expecting to as
well.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Definitely weren't.
One thing I want to touch on is the relationship impact to this, because I think I was seen as a selfish sport. I think you need to be selfish. There's a lot of and selfish is one part of it, but I think sacrifice is maybe a better way of communicating it. Social nights out, you said before, like you're enjoying a wee bit of like social time, still being disciplined to like show up. But how have you had? Are you with someone just now?
Not just now, no.
Right. So have you been in relationships in the past? I would imagine. Is that been a content or a stress on that relationship?
So my last 3 long-term relationships, they've all either been competitors themselves or within the industry, so they kind of know the ins and outs. It's still hard, even in that scenario where the person has done it themselves. They know exactly what you're going through mentally. They know exactly why you can't do certain things. It still is rough. So, so I got into competing when I was still with my high school girlfriend.
Oh, right.
And bodybuilding was definitely the reason why it ended.
Really?
A catalyst for it anyway.
Yeah.
So, and someone like myself who wants to take the sport where I want to take it, I have to be with someone who competes or understands the process, like someone who's maybe competed before in the past, but that doesn't bother me.
It's part and parcel of what it is. Yeah,
but it's kind of like it's one of those ones where the average girl probably
it's not just the gym. It's beyond the gym. It's
you
life.
have to be a very exceptional person to understand this lifestyle and competitive bodybuilding.
What about friendships?
Friendships are different. I'm lucky I've got like guys from I went to school with. They understand it. I lived with My mate Will lived in the Gorbals with him for almost 2 years. I think 2 years. So he got to see the ins and outs of it. But I went to school with him. I've known him since I was 12 years old. And I think when he saw what I was going through, he was like, right, okay, I respect this a little bit more.
Giant guys are a wee bit different though as well. Like it can be 4 months apart. It's like, oh, we have to. It's like, yeah, let's go do something different. It's fine.
Guys are different. And the experience that I've had with female clients and their friends, like, I can only describe it as vicious. Like, your pal's trying to do something for them. Like, let them be. If the girl doesn't want to go out for a few drinks on a Saturday night, who cares? Like, but again, I don't want to make it sexist, but women, it's almost as if like their whole world's imploding because that one friend can't come out for drinks.
It's like pure sabotaging.
Yeah,
sabotage more than that.
What I think it is like they can't have someone trying to better themselves when they're necessarily not. But that applies to men as well. So it's kind of like when you feel pressure to drink, they're pressuring you to drink because they know the decision they were making of drinking isn't necessarily the healthiest, and you're taking the route not to. So that's why you have that conflict in that front. But I think women are worse for it. Because my pals who aren't in bodybuilding, if I said to them, I can't come on a night out, I would be very, very surprised if they turned around and said, oh, mate, come on, blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, nope, that's what you do, that's fine. And definitely my mates who, I'm very lucky now, everyone that's closest to me is a competitor.
Yeah, so they're going to be in there.
It works very, very well. So
makes sense.
They have no issues with having no social life. So
being a coaching individuals through this, so you live and breathe this. I'd imagine maybe your discipline has never really wavered as much when you could go out to social settings and kind of stick to your guns with what you have to do macro wise and nutrition wise. How do you help clients through this? Was some strategies? Like clients, like more clients, because I'd imagine there is a large population of people who maybe want to do their first show, but maybe need to hear the sacrifice that needs to go in to make the decision. Like here, like if it's more of the glory of competing in that side of things, like are you prepared to do this work first?
So from a competitor point of view, like you have to give up obviously nights out. Like that's absolute no go. I tried to do like sober nights on just like sugar-free Red Bull. It's not fun. It's not worth it.
10 o'clock, it's like, I'm going home.
Aye. Like, trust me, like drinking, food, clubs, that'll all be there when you're done. If you really want to do this, all you have to, it's just 6 months commitment. Maybe you never do it again. Maybe you make a career of it. Maybe you're the next Mr. Olympia. Who knows? But it's only a 6 month commitment. Like, surely you can see that. Everything that we consider to be fun and it will all be there when you're done. Trust me, there's not going to be a nuclear holocaust when you're during prep. You know what I mean? So
6 months is the length of time that you think for if you're looking to kind of work up to your first show is enough?
So 6 months, so 20 to 24 weeks.
How would you split that down? Would there be more of a gaining phase at the start, I would imagine, and then tapered in, or it depends where the person's at?
The gaining phase could have happened for years prior. But in terms of the contest prep phase itself, I would recommend 24 to 20 weeks just to make sure you've got enough time to get.
Also that long,
yeah.
What is some strategy wise then in terms of that prep? Because sometimes I feel like me being a coach and just knowing the kind of obviously the detail of what goes into prep and having I've been the most defined but also balanced competitor being on stage. See, when it comes to cardio, do you feel that's butchered from some coaches with their contest prep, or just competitors?
I didn't do too much.
Way too much. I feel like I've seen some competitors doing like, and looking from what I see on Instagram, they've got pretty lean-ish physique, but they're up to like an hour and a half cardio, like 16 weeks out. And knowing what I know about the adaptation process and that, like, what is that the right thing to do from your point? Like, are you on board with them doing that? Like, how if
we're talking just kind of in general terms, if you're on that amount of cardio that far out, something's wrong, in my opinion.
I mean, that's where my head is like, right, you're gonna have to really squeeze. If I would forecast the average person of how they adapt to cardio, 3-4 hours, the closer to you get to that date, and that's no.
And I have heard people doing that. Yeah,
it's madness, isn't it?
Yeah, so there is no hard and fast rule as to what is perfect, but you want to be doing as little as possible at the start, working up to probably the most you can possibly do to get in shape, maybe 3-4 weeks before the show, and then you taper down into the show. That tends to be the strategy that most follow in the modern era. Anyways, is be ready slightly early, and then rather than doing these ridiculous carb ups at the end and loads, they kind of just eat up into the show and just gradually pull your physique out of that state. That tends to be what happens. So in a contest prep, it's kind of like this, and then it goes like that at the end. Like high days, low days, more
just
cardio, cardio, more drugs, less drugs towards the end. Yeah.
What do you do for like step count and cardio with your own prep? Is it like, how crazy is it got?
So if we're going off the last prep, I don't monitor my steps. I kind of know roughly what I do in terms of like how. So if I've got 3-4 clients in the morning, I know I'm roughly on my feet for that time. So I don't know my step count. Cardio, the most it got up to was 45 minutes on the bike in the morning and 10 minutes on the Stairmaster post-workout for 3 of the workouts.
That little? That is insane. I honestly think that's mental, because I see people who go on this journey of competing in their first show without a coach, and it's like, I don't know why it's like being drilled into us that cardio is the answer, and like cut your calories and hammer your body with cardio, and it's like, that metabolism that you're talking about earlier, what probably explains why yours is so good, is because of the care that you've given to it over the years. Yeah,
don't get me wrong, I have done way more cardio than that in the past. So that's trial and error. There has been preps where I've done an hour on the stairs in the morning, I'm training midday, and then I do an hour stairs at night. I've done those kind of preps, and I look better doing less. So that's trial and error. However, there are people who swear by doing a mountain of cardio but having more food. There's some people who swear that you should never be doing cardio other than steps. But you need to find what's right for you. A good coach will help you find that. Yeah,
I think that's important. So that was actually going to be one of the last questions to finish up on, would be like, for you, having coaches throughout your journey, how important, or having a coach in your corner, how important has that been for everything that you've learned?
Yeah, very. So I've had Graham, my current coach, Nick Vandal, and Patrick Chur. Those are the 3 guys I've worked with. In terms of, so being a coach myself, you have to help some people with their mindset a little bit more than others. I've got clients who are just robots, like you just press the switch and they'll do it. I've got clients who you have to manage emotionally a little bit more.
What clients do you like more?
That's the I like it all.
Yeah,
I like the broad range of people I work with. That's why I still do one-to-one PT. The thought of just doing contest prep, that bores me. Like I love working with,
because it's a formula, and once the formula is done for that person, it's like, right, the blueprint's there.
Exactly. There are coaches who only work with competitors, and that I could never do that. That's my idea of hell. I love training people. I love training people who have never trained, to people who have been training for 20 years. Contest prep. I love doing it all. I've kind of lost my train of thought.
Just in terms of coaches and how important they've been.
So it's important in terms of having a professional eye, or someone who knows what they're looking at. There's a lot of people who do 1-2 shows and then try and dab their feet into contest prep. I think that's a little bit irresponsible. But each their own. They may know. They may have worked with a coach who's very, very reputable, who taught them a lot along the way. So you just don't know. Because I remember the first guy that asked me to prep him, I think my first question was, really? Steve Copeland. And
I guess if you never do it, it's like, when do you make the leap? And I think as long as expectations are maybe set, it's like, look, I think I can give it a stab, but there's other people that you might be better going with.
And I know plenty of people, like friends of mine, who have dabbled with contest prep, and they've told the person, look, I've never done this before, just so you know, I'm just going off my own experience, and the client's been like, that's fine. Whereas obviously some other people would run a mile if they heard that, but I know that if I ever had a mindset problem, I can always phone Nick. I can go see Nick in person, but I don't rely on Nick for motivation. I'm very, very motivated, but I do rely on Nick to just settle my mind. So we've got quite a unique partnership. So I write my plans. I write my nutrition plan, my training plan, my PEDs, and then Nick gives the green light. So I'll say to Nick, right, I think I need to remove 50 grams of rice from meal 2. And he'll say, yep, that sounds about right from the way you look, or no, I think you should do this. So it's just having that final say on what I'm thinking. It just settles me going forward. So that's how coaching works with me. And Nick, I've worked with Patrick Tuer, where it was purely, here's your plan, do not deviate. That's that. There's no question, you follow that plan. And I didn't like that approach. I didn't like I didn't like not having control.
Yeah, I always wondered that, like, from a competitive point of view, especially at a professional level, how much of the relationship is it like that, especially with the Olympia guys as well? Is it just a matter of like, this is what you're doing, this is what's there? Because ultimately, the best coach is always your intuition and you kind of knowing their habit. I like the relationship that you said with your coach, where you're
I think a lot of the Olympians or the guys at that level probably do have that relationship, but I'm sure there are robots as well who just follow the plan to the T and don't ask questions, don't question anything, and just do it. I like to learn as well, but I think it also reflects my own coaching. So I've got guys and girls who are pretty clued up, and there's times where they check in and I'll tell them to do something and they're like, I don't think I should be doing that. I'm like, cool, if you don't think you should be doing that, then that's fine, I'm all ears. Whereas I know for a fact, I'm sure you know too, there'll be coaches that take a personal offence to that.
Yeah, it's not just that, like a programme, something that should be ever evolving and changing to life stresses.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the way I work allows me to work like that with clients as well, where they can turn around. There's one client in particular who crops to mind, and she's like, I want to do this. I'm like, okay, if you think that's going to work, that's fine, we'll run with that. And then I'll give you where I think you should then take that. And that works very, very well. So, it's very client and person dependent. If you want to be a robot and just hear X, Y, Z, fair play to you. If you want control and to completely prep yourself, fair play, with no outside help. That I couldn't do. I know for a fact, again, not from a mindset or motivation point of view, but just to know that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Because up until about 5 weeks out, your brain functions normally, and then after that point, it's mashed potatoes.
It's like, you just want to get through the day.
Exactly, yeah.
And then move on to the next
dying,
one.
Yeah.
One thing I actually meant to ask you was around the cost of your monthly expenses as a pro bodybuilder, like what it takes in and then what you get rewarded with at the end. Why is that so skewed? Like, why is that so off? Because there's very little money in the...
Yeah, the money from bodybuilding comes from PT and coaching at the end of the day. Only maybe the top 10 in the world make serious money directly from competing, like sponsorships and prize money. The rest make money from coaching.
What would you say a prep can cost you?
Right, so my shop, well, I'll break it down in terms of shopping.
Right.
So today I spent 150 quid on my weekly shop. It's all for me. And
I was about to say, that's not bad, but I forget mine, Jillian's is for both of us.
yeah. So that's just for me for 1 week, and that's not even peak food yet. It's nowhere near peak food. So my shopping bill in peak off season will be over £200.
All right.
I'm lucky that I'm now sponsored, so by Train by JP, so that covers my health supplements and some of my nutritional supplements as well. So, but yeah, it's thousands.
I was going to say, it's probably, you could be upwards of £3,000-4,000 in a month.
Yeah, but it's one of those ones where, like, I'll begrudge paying £30 for a t-shirt, but I'll spend
no problem at all.
Food, anything bodybuilding related, 100%. I'll fork out for it. It's the same. Like, I always use golf as an example. Like, the amount of money that people spend on golf clubs, that blows my mind.
I know, it's insane. Their swing's not even that good.
Exactly. Or guys who like do up their car, like, and put all these mods on it. I was like, oh yeah, see that exhaust? It cost me $4,000. It's like,
excuse me,
why? It's perfectly fine exhaust on it.
It's the passion and the love for it, isn't it?
Love for it, and you'll justify anything if you actually have that love and passion for it. So
it must be quite cool to get sponsored then by the likes of like JP supplements.
Yeah,
is that one of the coolest brand supplement deals you've had?
It's probably one of the biggest brands in the world in terms of health supplementation. I know Jordan personally, so cool. I've known him since I was a junior, so he's always been very, very nice to me, and I would say we have a good, I wouldn't say friendship, but like, cause I've never spent much time in his company, but I've always liked Jordan, and yeah, so that.
Is there any like dream sponsors you're like, oh, it'd be quite
that's probably my dream sponsor.
That was it? Yeah.
And then when he sent through the contract, I was like, well, that's a pretty good contract, so class. I was very, very happy with that. So hopefully,
That continues, yeah.
Continues, yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Is it, looking back then, is the highlight of your journey been recently the pro card, or is what kind of stands out of where you're at?
It kind of has to be. It kind of has to be the pinnacle of everything. But I've won other shows throughout my time doing this that have meant just as much. So
your first show, you said, is that still kind of the one that stands out?
The standing on stage on my first show I came second at that one. So
4 weeks.
It wasn't as euphoric as it could have been. But yeah, the first time standing on stage, the first time I won a British, so that was IFBB British in 2013. That, because it was the first big title, Flex Lewis has won that, Nathan Diash has won that, James Hollingshead's won that.
Felt like you're kind of joining a hall of fame of like these that exceptional athletes.
That win for me was probably more euphoric than winning the pro card, to be honest.
Yeah.
Just because it wasn't expected, and I'd never thought I'd be that level. And it was probably at that point where I decided I was never going to be a Royal Marine. I was like, I know I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder. Yeah,
on the path.
So that was that. When I won the NABA British in 2019, I still to this day have no idea why that one meant so much to me, but it did. I loved that title. So yeah, there's been times throughout my career where I've been just as happy as I was there.
So highlights are obviously seem to be like the shows and all that sort of stuff. Any highlights in like out with the shows that kind of come to mind that you've kind of achieved
still
in life?
Within bodybuilding?
Yeah, just in general. Like this is life, just the life. It just shows you how kind of like where your mind's at with it. That's why I was asking.
Out with a bodybuilding. Oh, it's depressing.
It's your life though. Like it would make sense.
It's absolutely everything. Like all my income, my career,
your dog, maybe.
My dog.
There you go.
Well, I've got my dog with a fellow competitor. So
bodybuilding.
So I still have a dog through bodybuilding. I don't know. I've been all over the world with bodybuilding. There's not much.
It sounds like it's opened up many doors for you, and
it has. Yeah,
you've got an incredible amount of integrity, discipline, and passion towards it, and it's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on. So thank you for sharing your time. I always do like but like I was doing like overrated, underrated with the last guest. I thought a good one to maybe ask you would be, if there's only 5 exercises you have to do for the rest of your life, past your bodybuilding days, whatever it is, what would be the exercises that you choose?
Incline dumbbell press, dumbbell shoulder press, a T-bar row, a dumbbell row, and probably a hack. Yeah, go with a hack.
Take the legs in. There you go. There's a 5 exercise split for you guys listening.
Just do all that. That's fine.
There you go.
Sorry.
Right, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Your time.